across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good afternoon. Yes, welcome to the home of common sense. Thank you to Julia. Back tomorrow, 10 o'clock. Loads to get through. The Home Secretary is warning that Britain's border failures are eroding public trust. She only just clocked this one, demanding tougher action and foreign cooperation as illegal migration surges in this country. Who do you actually trust to secure our borders? I mean, wouldn't it be weird if Labour suddenly pulled it out the bag and all the madness stopped? Details on the way also this afternoon, all breaking and coming to a bit of a crescendo. Part one in the Commons in the last hour. Sir Keir Starmer facing mounting criticism after finally admitting a key meeting in the China spying case, first reported in the Sunday Times, did actually take place. He now claims no details of the scandal were discussed. He's being accused of a serious blunder and a cover-up that risks national security. Some are even suggesting he might have misled the Commons. That, by the way, is a resigning offence. Details to come. And Ed Miliband has okayed the UK's largest solar farm despite forced labour concerns in the Chinese supply chain, sparking outrage over Labour's growing dependence on China and disregard for British farmland. We'll have more on that story too. Details on the way, everything you need to know. We'll have all the breaking news right here on Talk. So much to get through. Absolutely rammed. Every now and again, I think it's fair to say, it's a bit like a kind of carousel. Every now and again you meet a political genius, right? They just pop up once in a while and you go, oh, wow, they are good. Someone who isn't afraid to tell it like it is. Someone who will shock you to your very core with their brutal honesty and insight. You know the kind of thing. Someone who will tell you something you hadn't thought of before, hit the nail on the head and the bullseye all in one. Well, today's nomination for Genius of the Year goes to our own Home Secretary. Shabana Mahmood is the one. God, she is incredible. She's on fire. Are you ready for this? This is what she's saying. She says, we've lost control of our borders. Right, say that again, Shabana. We've lost control of our borders. Has she only just realised this? I told you so. She's amazing. What wisdom she has. And there's more brilliance. She says that Britain's failure, this is even better than the first point. She says Britain's failure to control its borders is eroding trust in politicians and the credibility of the state. I mean, it is beyond extraordinary. She's off to have meetings in London with Balkan interior ministers on the issue. One of the frankest assessments yet of the risks the government is running if it fails to get a grip of immigration. And she argues, essentially, that only international cooperation can secure our borders. I mean, this is absolute piffle. It's arrant nonsense. Flannel juice and gibberish of the highest measure. I mean, there's not just that, by the way. I mean, there's other stuff to look at here as well. Meanwhile, and this is thanks to a great piece by Julia Atherley in The Sun, illegal migrants awaiting deportation from Britain are getting free art and craft lessons. I mean, what you really need when you're about to be kicked out of the country is for the Border Force boys to go, don't worry, lads, today we're going to build a papier-mâché pig. Get your balloons ready. Blow them up. Just before you go back. Maybe blow them up's not the right turn of phrase, but you take the point. They're also getting IT tutorials, English lessons. These are the kind of perks that are offered under these massive contracts at the removal centres at Gatwick Airport. These are 260 million quid's worth of contract. Other perks include a welfare buddy to help them adjust emotionally, free gym access and a £5 a week for personal spending money. There it is, front page of The Sun. What a waste. I mean, it's just extraordinary. Those being held at Gatwick in the Immigration Removal Centre are allowed to request specific items from the on-site shop. From the on-site, flipping Amazon going on there. As well as fresh ingredients to cook their own food in dedicated kitchens. The detainees can even earn £1 an hour for cleaning or serving up food or even managing the gym. Just brilliant. These are people, illegal people, undesirable people in our country. They're about to be booted out. And we're splashing 260 million quid in their direction. So all these stories dovetail together, by the way. Meanwhile, what about this? Foreign nationals now make up 1 in 6 universal credit recipients. Official figures show almost 1.3 million migrants, most of whom don't have jobs, were given the benefit in July. And just by way of a comparison, in 2022, that was 930,000. So we're looking at almost 400,000 increase. The Tories are not happy. Helen Whately, who we had on this show just yesterday, she's a shadow Secretary for Work and Pensions, she says we need a new approach to welfare. Now, it was just shy of 1 million under the Tories, so I'm not absolutely sure she's got a lot of wiggle room to start bleating about this one. And meanwhile, and here is the overarching kicker, Nigel Farage is set for the biggest Commons majority in modern political history, with the Tories, I mean, this is just unbelievable, if this were to pan out. The Tories, under this poll, would be reduced to just 7 MPs. Just 7 MPs. You'd almost have the Reform Party kind of, in terms of numbers, going into Tory territory, and the collective Tory and Labour territory going into Reform. They would be, according to this poll, on course to win 445 seats. Labour would be down to 73 seats. That's fewer than the Conservatives have right now. And as I said, the Tories would be down to 7. There are some possibilities of tactical voting which could almost block Nigel Farage's path to victory, with more than a third of Labour voters saying they would be willing to back the Tories in order to stop reform. Well, we've got to wait till 2029 for this extravaganza to unfold. I mean, I absolutely can't wait. I feel envy of the future. I did wish it was tomorrow that all of this was upon us. But it does rather beg the question. So they're all scratching their head, and you've got the Home Secretary, I mean, quite literally wondering what's happened, saying, well, you know, it's possible here that not controlling our borders is eroding trust in politicians and the credibility of the state. We've known this for years, for God's sake. Absolutely yonks. This is the central conversation of the day around the United Kingdom, that politicians have failed. They could sort it if they wanted to. So they reckon, Labour reckon, actually, there's still time. They can do this. The Tories have got all sorts of ideas about welfare and what they're going to allow and not allow. And Reform UK are the most robust on this one, talking about deportations running into the hundreds of thousands. With all of that in mind, who do you, just give me your overview of all of these stories, please. 0344 499 1000. But who do you trust on immigration, to secure our borders? Who is it that you actually trust to get it right? Let's get a word on this from Chloe Dobbs, back with us, political commentator. Good afternoon to you, Chloe.
Good afternoon, Ian.
Always good to have you with us. I mean, let's just start on that big revelation that Shabana Mahmood, I appreciate she's not been in the job that long, but she's just discovered that failure to secure our borders is eroding trust in politicians.
Really?
Wow. She's amazing, isn't she?
I've never heard that before.
No.
I had no idea that the trust in politicians was eroding. I mean, has this woman been in a coma for the past few years or something, and she's just woken up?
Yep.
I mean, have they seen the way the polls are going over the past year? I mean, you've just mentioned that huge mega poll we've just had come out predicting Reform to have 445 seats. Do I think it will be quite that big? No. You've mentioned tactical voting, but I think it's very, very clear from these polls in terms of seats, Starmer's approval ratings personally and whatnot, that the complete and utter failure to control our borders is completely eroding trust in politicians.
Yeah.
This has been going on for several years now. That's why one big reason why the Tories lost the general election last year so badly. And Labour are just realising this. I mean, they've been saying, well, from before the general election and after, oh, we're going to smash the gangs, we're going to tinker around, try a few different little policies to try and deal with this issue. But what has been clear to me is that from the start, there has been no sense of urgency. Although they realise that this is something that matters to the electorate, they haven't exactly been dealing with it like an emergency, like Nigel Farage has been calling for in the Commons, saying, will you now declare a national emergency and sort this out? But I just haven't seen any of that sense of urgency. If there was a sense of urgency, they'd be wanting to leave the ECHR, or at least start ignoring ECHR judgments, saying this is really, really serious, especially after we've just had a terrorist attack. And sure, the individual who committed that terrorist attack may not have come on a boat, but what we do know is that we have a load of men many coming from dodgy countries which have terrorist organizations coming across our borders, and it does make you worry. Are we potentially going to end up with more attacks like this?
Yeah.
If we have all these unvetted people, we don't know who they are. I mean, if a terrorist wants to come to Britain and get into this country, it's very easy for them to do so. We've just had that sentencing of the TikToker with the nickname Madapasa, who threatened to kill Nigel Farage. And what Nigel was saying is, we only know about this guy because he was stupid enough to put it on TikTok. How many other individuals are coming into this country who could potentially threaten the lives and well-being of the people here? This needs to be treated like an emergency, and it's completely insane that Labour are just waking up to it. I mean, I know she's not been in the job for long, but to me it feels like a little bit of an act, because she wasn't shouting from the rooftops before she had this job that this is the big issue that Labour needs to focus on. I mean, there's I'm not sure if you've seen the old clip of her talking about people with England flags, saying, oh, most people that put up England flags, they're those far-right EDL lot. She wasn't exactly sounding very patriotic in the past.
They just don't get it. If I was thinking of this earlier, if only somebody could construct an argument that suggested that those boats coming across the channel gave off a disproportionate amount of CO2s, then Ed Miliband would be right. It would stop overnight. You know, this is a man that's about to build solar farms on 3,000 acres of prime countryside, and that level of obsession. And I said this during COVID when they closed the country down. Never again can any government argue, oh, I'm sorry, it's not possible. We now know that anything is possible. It's possible to close a country down if you want to. It's possible to build a wind farm that is the size of something like, 300 football pitches. It's possible. If you want to stop people crossing the channel, it is possible. You have to. The one thing Macron said, get rid of the pull factor. And he's absolutely spot on about that. If you thought you were coming over to this country and you were going to be taken to, I don't know, 3,000 acres of land where they've erected an area, a centre, everything's clean and tidy. Yes, you will get food and all the rest of it, but it won't be a hotel, and it certainly won't be an apartment or a home of multiple occupancy. That's where you're going to go for the next couple of years. Do you still want to come? I reckon you'd see a reduction overnight.
Yeah, absolutely. And although there may be difficulties in deporting people because of all the lawfare that we see, I mean, two things. So first of all, there are some very basic things that we could do to reduce the pull factor. I mean, you've mentioned in your mono there, Ian, these art classes and all sorts that they are getting. They've got bouncy castle trips, 50 quid a week, spending cards. I mean, the perks that they get are absolutely obscene. You could start by just reducing some of that. I mean, they also told us, we're going to crack down on Deliveroo illegal working. What have they done? Fined one guy 26 quid? No sense of urgency whatsoever. So they could at least get the basics right. And then when it comes to the lawfare side of us that seems to stop us from deporting anybody, we can just stop ignoring the ECHR. Other countries do it. France does it. Germany does. You could
already ignore it. I mean, just ignore it. These are people coming into the country. I'm afraid you don't carry the same weight of rights and entitlements as residents do. I even think if you ask most people on those boats, they'd probably agree with that, for goodness sake. Just make sure that if you're going to come here, you're not going to be put up in hotels. You're not going to get all the, paper mache pigs and gym classes and free Lime bikes or whatever the hell they're giving away this week. I mean, it's an absolute nonsense. So if you had that in place, which could happen, It could happen tomorrow if there was the political will. And it brings us on, Chloe, to this story, this poll, this huge, what they're calling a mega poll, that has predicted something more than just your average landslide for Nigel Farage and Reform UK. As you said, 445 seats. The Tories reduced to just 7 seats, according to this. Let's have a listen to the Reform leader speaking on Talk at the time of the last election.
It's over. Labour have won. This is now about who forms the voice of opposition in the next Parliament and in the country. And it won't be the Conservatives. They'll be in opposition, but they won't be the opposition. They're split down the middle. They agree on nothing. They have no purpose. They don't stand for a blooming thing. Whereas what we stand for is perfectly clear, and people know that. Do you know, once every 50 or 100 years, remarkable things happen. It happened in Canada back in '93, where the Reform Party, funny, same name, came from the outside, and the existing Conservatives got crushed. We could just be at one of those historic moments.
And then you fast forward a year, Chloe, and you begin to see polls such as this. And although this is more generous to Reform than others, it's consistent with others in putting them ahead.
Yeah, I mean, this poll is absolutely huge. And as I said before, I don't think that they will get quite that many seats, but what it makes very clear is that Reform are potentially very capable of at least getting an outright majority. Yeah. Because they're always asked in every media interview they do, will you do a deal with the Tories? Surely there's a good chance that you're going to have to form a coalition with the Conservative Party and Reform. They've stood their ground and said, no, we don't need to do a deal with the Tories. We can do it alone. And over time, it now seems to appear that it may be possible for them to actually do it alone without a deal with the Tories. I mean, 7 seats for the Tory party.
7.
That's crazy. And in that clip that you showed there of Nigel speaking last year, he says now it's about who forms the voice of opposition.
Yeah.
And one thing that was really noticeable to me is after the general election last year, and you only had 5 Reform MPs, is that in Parliament, all of the viral videos you were seeing coming out of Parliament, they were all Reform MPs going after Starmer, holding the government to account. And the Tories were silent. I mean, we had Rishi Sunak there for a while before Kemi Badenoch came in. But, I mean, when we had the whole clampdown on free speech over the summer last year, it was Reform who were trying to hold Starmer to account for that. And Rishi Sunak was just silent off in California on his holidays. And then even when Kemi Badenoch did come in, I know she's had a few good PMQs the past few weeks, but it's taken her a year to really get going. Even though they've got far more MPs who can stand up and ask questions in the comments.
Of course. I mean, they should be on fire at the moment, the Conservative Party. They get those 6 questions every week. She's on interviews more than any other politician outside the Prime Minister or the Cabinet. So it's not as if she hasn't got the stage in order to kind of make it happen, but it's just not cutting through at the moment. We'll come back to that story as well. Chloe, stay with us. Loads more to come, including an update on that anti-Semitic chant from an Oxford student. We'll bring you the latest, just breaking in a couple of moments. It's 1:20. This is Talk.
Hamas are just shooting their own Palestinian neighbours because they don't like them, because they're part of a different gang. By recognising those bloodthirsty cockroaches, by recognising those ghastly terrorists, actually it almost scuppered the peace deal. Keir Starmer's in Parliament lying about how actually it helped it. Well, it didn't help it. And they accuse people of talking the country down. Well, they're taking the country down, which is a lot worse than talking it down. They're actually taking it down into the gutter, into the sewer, and further down into the depths and the bowels of the earth, from which it may never recover.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
24 minutes after 1 o'clock, Chloe Dobbs with us. Let's move on to this one, Chloe. This breaking in just the last few moments. Oxford student Samuel Williams has been identified as the person leading that extreme chant at a pro-Palestinian rally in London, sparking a Metropolitan Police investigation. He's a politics student. He was filmed making inflammatory comments. Yesterday, we haven't got that clip to hand at the moment. But in fact, we can play the clip, just give you a taster and an idea of exactly what it was he was saying. Here he is.
I don't want to yap for too long, but a chant that we've been workshopping in Oxford that maybe you guys want to join in. It goes, Gaza, Gaza, make us proud, put the Zios in the ground. Gaza, Gaza, make us proud, put the Zios in the ground. Gaza, Gaza, make us proud, put the Zios in the ground.
There it is. That's what he was saying. Nice fella. He's just been arrested, by the way. The Met have nicked him. We'll await, Chloe, to see what it comes to. But rightly so. I mean, it doesn't get more overt than that, does it?
No, I'm guessing your camera's broken, Ian.
Yes, on a completely different angle.
Typical talk. Yeah, we'll see what happens, and presumably the university they'll wait and see the outcome of a police investigation to see exactly what happens. But I think with what this guy has said here, and with what the president-elect of the Oxford Union, George Aberonius, said about Charlie Kirk's death, celebrating him being shot, it's clear to me that these students, they live in a bubble where they think that saying things like this are completely normal and completely acceptable in the woke echo chamber that they live in. I've just had a look now on the Charwell website, Oxford's main student paper, and there isn't a single story on the front page about this guy, whereas the rest of us who live in the real world and can see that this is blatantly anti-Semitic and disgusting, it's all over the place. I mean, the main story they seem to have on their website is the fact that there are Oxford offer holders trapped in Gaza. They've not even mentioned this guy. I've had a look on the Oxford Palestine Solidarity campaign to see if they put out any statement. Nope. They think that this is normal, and it's very concerning, and I think it's such a great shame because Oxford is such a prestigious university with such an impressive reputation that is very quickly dwindling because of cases like this going viral, and people are absolutely shocked that there are individuals like this attending the University of Oxford, which before has been very, very clear on what it stands for, and that it is rigorous, thoughtful debate, carefully thinking through the other side's opinion, and if you don't like, for example, the opinion of Zionists, that you would carefully pick apart the argument for Zionism in a careful and thoughtful and respectful way. And that's clearly not what you are seeing in this case. And so I think that Oxford needs to really, I think in the admissions process, I think on the open days that they have for new students thinking of applying, being very, very firm and very, very clear. You only apply here if this is your attitude and you behave properly when dealing with people who you disagree with, rather than saying we should put them in the ground.
Yeah, I mean, calling for the death of people who have a different opinion to you is quite something. But of course, they try to get away with this by going, oh, we're talking about Zionists. We're not talking about, like, all Jews or all people who are have an affiliation with Israel. We're just talking about Zionists. No, they're not really. And even if you were talking about Zionists in their interpretation, why would it be okay to kill them? I mean, it's just an extraordinary position. But nothing we haven't seen before we will see again. And, of course, we'll update our audience on what happens after this character got himself nicked by the law, arrested earlier today. And this story, Chloe, this is kind of penciled in, really, to get much bigger over the coming days. Keir Starmer facing mounting criticism after finally admitting a key meeting on the China spying case, first reported in the Sunday Times, did actually take place. He claims no details of the scandal were discussed, but he's being accused of a serious blood. Asked, whether or not there was a, are you really saying, Mr. Starmer, this was all down to one man? And he said, yes, it was. Well, so nobody knew anything. I mean, the entirety of Downing knew nothing about this case collapsing until it did.
I know that was quite a fiery PMQs today. They were really, Kemi and Starmer really going at each other for this, both trying to point fingers at each other. Starmer, of course, trying to, like Labour do with everything, blame the previous Tory government. Starmer still holding the line that this is all about the fact that the Tories between 2021 and 2023 failed to declare China a threat. Kemi coming back with plenty of evidence that that was not the case. And Starmer has said he will put out the witness statements, because Starmer is making it out as though it was the Tories that were meant to supply the evidence when they were in government. But then the statement from the Director of Public Prosecutions suggests I was asking this government, the Labour government, to provide evidence for months and months that China is a threat, and they have failed to give what I have been asking for. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens when those witness statements come out. But this, there were a lot of inconsistencies in what he was saying, and Kemi Badenoch did a good job of pointing that out. And as you say, he claimed that this meeting, he accepted that this meeting did happen, whilst also saying that none of these people knew any of the details of the case. And then it was quite shocking when she said, OK, so you're seriously saying that the Deputy Security Advisor, but not the Security Advisor, not the Prime Minister, and nobody in Number 10 knew any of the details of that case? And he just said, yes. Yeah.
And as many commentators are pointing out that, I mean, if that turns out not to be the case, then he would have misled Parliament, and that, of course, is potentially a resigning issue. We will watch with interest. It's not a story that really grips the nation too much, because it sort of sounds like too convoluted in terms of the legalese and all that's involved. But this could be a turning point. We will watch with interest. Chloe, thank you very much indeed, as ever. Chloe Dobbs, political commentator, with us on the programme. Throwing out the question as well this afternoon, who do you trust to secure our borders? There may be, for many of you, one obvious answer. Could Labour turn it around? That sounds like a bit of a joke, doesn't it? Could the Conservatives turn it around? They've got time. Could they make that happen? This comes, of course, as the Home Secretary reveals today that we haven't got secure borders. Really? Is that the best she's got in the bag? She also said that failing to secure our borders is eroding trust in politicians and the state's credibility. I mean, this is genius stuff from the Home Secretary, right? Thoughts on that? Who do you trust to secure our borders? 0344 499 1000. Our lines are open. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is indeed Talk. This one comes in from Rachel. It says, I'm very pleased to hear that numpty from Oxford University has been arrested. About time. What a disgrace to one of our most prestigious institutions. Hope they kick him out. Well, thank you, Rachel, for that. I think a lot of people would agree with precisely those comments. And, of course, we will update you when we find out more about what has happened and whether anybody's been charged and the like. Let's go back then to concentrate on our Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, who's warned that, I mean, this takes genius to another level. She's finally work this out. She's warned that border failures are eroding trust as small boat crossings hit record highs and migrant returns lag far behind. Labour proposes tougher migrant rules. Yeah, right. But public discontent is clear and it's showing. And we mentioned that blockbuster new poll that has predicted Reform UK could sweep 445 seats at an election, with voters prioritising the economy and turning away from the main parties. We'll speak to Hugh Anthony, political commentator, in just a second. First, Andrea Jenkins, always lovely to have Andrea on the show, is with us, Reform UK Mayor of Greater Lincolnshire. Andrea, I didn't know whether to talk to you about solar panels or migration today, but I mean, we had a big old choice there. But let's talk about this amazing revelation. The Home Secretary has only just realised that most of the country are not happy.
Oh, absolutely. But we saw with the Conservatives as well, they was out of touch. How many times was I outspoken on illegal migration? Yeah, I just think that both parties, they've been in their ivory tower for too long. And I mean, what a ridiculous comment, isn't it? It takes it to new levels, really. Yeah, eroding trust in our politicians, and we're not securing our borders. And the other point, of course, she's making with this meeting with Balkans leaders is that it's got to be an international thing. I mean, of course it would help if other countries played their part, but it doesn't have to just be that. We could put a stop to this tomorrow if we wanted to. Yeah, and to me, it's just rhetoric, isn't it? What are the actions behind this? I mean, at the moment with Britain, we've got this great big flag and with our name on above it saying freebies here, isn't it? Yeah. All you can eat freebies, come along. And that's got to stop. Until we stop giving freebies out and putting people in hotels, then things are not going to change. I mean, if I'm about to go into a council meeting, actually, of the Combined Authority. Do you know that in Lincolnshire, they spend £1 million a year on ESOL? That's English as a foreign language. And I want to put a stop to that. I think that money should go to the British people who live in the county, to local folk. Let them have literacy and numeracy skills. Yeah, so, why would that be? I mean, there'd be people listening to this on the left, Andrea, who would go, of course, a bit strange thing to say, Ms. Jenkins. But there's nothing controversial about what you've just said. It's a very it's the sort of thing you'd teach a 5-year-old, right? Yeah, exactly. But also, look, I mean, they're coming here illegally. Why should we give freebies anyway? But you can learn languages on phones with an app. Yep. Let's face it, on all the videos you see, they've all got iPhones, haven't they? Well, yeah, it's not hard to find a way to learn English. I mean, it's extraordinary. And, of course, there's this amazing poll that has just come out. I know that this one's particularly generous to Reform UK, but even if you just looked at the others, I mean, they all pretty much say a very similar thing. This latest one, 7 seats for the Tories. Yes, I'm not surprised by that, actually. I was trying to work out who that might be. I'm in Sevenoaks. I mean, that's usually a dead cert. If you could put a blue rosette on a chimpanzee and it would win. But you take the point. So Sevenoaks is probably safe, but I don't know where the other 6 are. No, absolutely. But I mean, I had a friend who went across to the conference, the Conservative conference, and she's coming across to Reform. She said, I'm not staying in. It was like going to a morgue. Yeah. So there's no energy there. But with some people in the party, I think it's that actually born to rule attitude that not fully learning the lessons. And this is why Reform are doing so well. Yeah. We are speaking common sense. And let's face it, Nigel's got a history of saying the things what people don't say, but they actually think. Yeah. So he's got a history of that. He's the real deal. It's interesting. It's interesting what you just said as well about, the Conservatives and Labour as well. They've kind of ruled in this sort of status quo bubble, haven't they, for so long.
This is how you do politics. You can't do that. You can't do this. You have to do it this way. And the civil service quite like it that way as well, because it's all very easy and nice and clinical. And politics has changed, and it's changed rather. I mean, there's been a gradual approach, but it's certainly in the last couple of years it's really changed. Social media plays a part in that. I know it's probably one of the strengths of social media, and I know it's sometimes a questionable terrain.
I think it's like another Brexit moment, don't you?
Yeah, it absolutely feels like that.
But with political parties, I think the system is actually now being broken down. It's going to be rebuilt with other parties entering, such as Reform. And I genuinely feel that, if we keep on this upward trajectory, then Nigel will be Prime Minister, and I think he'll be the saviour of Britain, actually.
Well, and according to that poll, with a landslide that nobody could have imagined, 445, according to that, which is just extraordinary.
Well, going to come out even more now by the mainstream media. We saw it in Brexit, and by both the political parties, the Conservatives, Labour and Lib Dem, the Greens. It's going to be a tax on steroids at Nigel and Reform.
We'll watch with interest. Andrea, we'll let you get to your council meeting. Thank you very much indeed, as ever, for your time. Andrea Jenkins is the Reform UK Mayor for Greater Lincolnshire. Let's get a word with Hugh Anthony, political commentator. Hugh, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, TV.
Lovely to have you with us for the first time as well.
Much.
Nice to have you on board. Listen, I know you talk a lot about politics, you talk a lot about immigration and stuff, but what a revelation today from the Home Secretary that the lack of political will or action has somehow eroded trust in our politicians. I mean, who would have thought it?
Who would have guessed? Who would have guessed that after all of these decades of immigration being ignored by the ruling class, that now all of a sudden, when it's unsustainable, and they realise that the average bloke, the average woman can see it on the streets, we can see the mass levels of migration, and they can't ignore it anymore. Yeah. I mean, it was a mere few weeks ago they tried to make it out like we were all racist for wanting to talk about immigration levels, and now they've had to admit, yes, it's a problem that we cannot sustain.
And it's extraordinary she's come out with this now. I mean, I was about to say the damage is already done with Labour, but let's be honest, this subject is not really in their DNA anyway, is it? I mean, they say a few things and they get their members at a conference to wave a couple of flags as if like, oh, look at us, we're proud to be British, and it doesn't really work with Labour. It's not who they are.
No, it's plastic patriotism. These politicians have never once had it in their pledges to deal with the levels of immigration. I mean, we've seen it for years and years where they've promised to reduce it and then they haven't. I mean, when Labour came in, they said that we were going to deal with it, and they've had to admit that in the last 9 months of the beginning of this year, it's been the worst level of illegal migration coming across the Channel. They're doing nothing about it. They're just kicking the can further down the road.
And the bit that drives me absolutely nuts is this idea that there's kind of nothing you can do about it. I said it to Chloe, our previous guest, as well. That after we had COVID and this ridiculous lockdown scenario, it was not lost on me that never again can a government say this is not possible, because we now know that anything is possible if they want it to happen. If you can close down hospitals, people's businesses, schools, workplaces, if you can do that, you can do flipping anything. And what they're telling us now is they can't stop some rubber dinghies coming across the English Channel. I mean, this is cobblers, high-octane nonsense.
Well, it's exactly the point. They can shut down the entire country to the point where multiple small business has to close, and they can bail out all the big business. They can shut down schools and people's educations for a year at a time. Yeah. But they can't deal with a few swarms of individuals coming across on rubber dinghies in the Channel. It's absolutely ridiculous. They simply are ignoring the issue because ignoring the issue has been able to get them away from dealing with the public backlash for so long. But at this point in time, it's unsustainable, and the public aren't going to stand for it. I mean, that's why you've seen all of these protests at all the hotels over the last few months and whatnot. They're beginning to realise we aren't going to ignore this problem. We can see what is happening.
It's interesting. I was having this discussion at the weekend with, a mate who's a bit of a squealing lefty, to be honest, but, not bad to have a beer with and a bag of pork scratchings. And he was saying, not every migrant in a hotel is a sex offender. I said, well, nobody said they were. The point is, we don't know who they are. That's the reality of this. We have no idea. We don't even know where they come from. I mean, that's an extreme. You wouldn't put that situation. Here's 200 blokes going to live in your postcode. No idea who they are. They're all average age about 23, but they're just going to live alongside you. Some of them might be wrong uns. We just don't know which ones. I think asking people to play that game of Russian roulette is not fair.
No, I think it's completely unfair. I mean, you can throw that argument with anything. You can go, well, not everyone of this section is bad people, but of course you're still going to find bad apples in it. It's the point of restricting the ability for those bad apples to even be in this country in the first place to prevent any harm against the British people. And I think playing the game of semantics around these things is going to do nothing more than allow more danger to be put on the street, and that's not what we want in this country.
Indeed, and even if you park that kind of part of the argument, because there are many kind of facets to this, I mean, the economic argument alone would be enough. You might think, just to spite anybody's interest in this, the millions of pounds per day that is going into this. Andrea Jenkins was just talking about English lessons that just in her county of Greater Lincolnshire, where they're paying, I think, over £1 million on English lessons. We talked about these detention centres for migrants who have actually been earmarked already to be kicked out the country because they were wrong-uns or didn't fit the bill, whatever. And there's 260 million going in that direction as well. I mean, it's eye-watering numbers. So if somebody doesn't want to have the argument about safety, fine, let's have the economic one, because that's as strong an argument as any.
I mean, even economically, I mean, we've got these detention centres where they're getting free art lessons, they're getting free English lessons, free meals, £5 a week. They can earn money for helping clean up around the detention centre. It's absolutely ludicrous. I mean, these people are going to see this as nothing more than a holiday resort. They're not going to see it as illegally breaking into a country. And it's not a deterrent in the slightest. They'll go back to whatever country they came from, and they'll just tell all their friends, there's nothing wrong with breaking into the UK. It's fine.
Absolutely. It's very easy done. It literally is very easy. I mean, that's not an exaggeration. There's no hyperbole in there. You come over on a boat, and before you know it, you are in a hotel. You will be fed, you will be housed, you'll be safe, you'll have access to dental treatment and doctors and the like. And even if you're a thoroughly decent person and your mum would be proud of you, that's fine. That is the kind of response we have. And to go back to what I previously said, it's one of those few areas where Macron was actually right. And I don't say that very often, but until we get rid of the pull factor, this is just going to continue.
No, I completely agree, and that's what they see it as. They see us as basically like heaven to them. We are this economic advancement that's going to help them live a luxurious life like they want to. They see our economy as beneficial to them, and a lot of them are economic migrants that are coming over as well. They're not here because they're fleeing.
100%.
A lot of them are. A lot of them are here because they want the money that we can offer them, and we are doing such. We're allowing them to work illegally for things like Uber Eats and whatnot, which is putting more money in their pockets at the expense of the British people.
100%. And of course, it comes back to that big survey that's just come out, that big poll that puts reform in this extraordinary position. I know this one was, extra generous, if you like, to reform, but similar polls show very similar results. The Tories down to 7 seats, which is, this is the most successful political party in Western history, and there they are predicted to get just 7 seats. I understand, Hugh, you went to the Tory party conference. Now, first question was why did you want to do that? And secondly, what were the results of your visit over there at Manchester?
Well, I wanted to see the level that the Tories were at regarding their hope for the future. And it just seemed, honestly, like Andrew said, like a bit of a funeral. Everyone just seemed really depressed, like there was not a lot of hope. I mean, they struggled to fill multiple different rooms and whatnot. But you could just see the grey faces on people walking around realising, this is kind of the end of the Tory party. And I think it's of note that when the Tory party dies, so does the Labour Party. And I think Labour's beginning to see that effect as well. And you can see that in the new polls.
100%. Hugh, great to have you on with us. We'll speak again, definitely. Hugh Anthony, political commentator, with us. Thoughts on that? Because there's quite a lot to get into. There's more than one strand. Sometimes you have to put all these stories together and kind of work out the common theme in all of this, the distrust in politics, the amount of your money. I heard that clip the other day of Margaret Thatcher, so I've heard it so many times, I should have it as a ringtone, frankly, where she says, the government doesn't have any money, it only has taxpayers' money. And it's true. And it's going on this old nonsense to make papier-mâché pigs down at a deportation centre in Gatwick. And God knows what else, millions of pounds a day. So the economic argument alone, if you are uncomfortable having the argument about personal safety, and I know that can get exaggerated, I get that, then look at the economics of this. It's ridiculous. And now you've got the Home Secretary making a speech today saying that failure to secure our borders is eroding trust in politicians. I mean, I don't know whether to laugh or cry when I hear the Home Secretary. She's only just discovered this. It's been a downward spiral for the two main parties for so long. I mean, Reform UK are doing well because, I mean, people clearly like Nigel Farage and they like the policies, but it's this kind of old guff that comes out of the two main parties that is created. I mean, these people are literally the architects of their own downfall. You can't make it up. If you lob this into a book or a proposal for a TV show, you'd be laughed out the room a couple of years ago. That would never happen. Why would that? And here we are. This is playing out in real time. The government are live streaming itself into oblivion right now, and so are the Conservative Party. And Nigel Farage and co are sitting back going, well, we're talking the language. Even if you disagree with Nigel Farage, even if you wouldn't ordinarily vote for him, if he was on fire, I get all of that. But the point is, blame the two main parties on this one. So when I ask the question, who do you trust to secure our borders, then I can't imagine many people are going to go, yeah, I think it might be the Conservatives. I mean, most of this stuff happened under the Conservatives, and it's continued to happen and get worse under Labour. These are not small incidental issues. This is big. It's big culturally. It's big economically. It's big in terms of social assimilation. It's big in every respect. And until the Tories and Labour can get their stupid heads around this, it's going to continue. 0344 499 1000.
Hamas are just shooting their own Palestinian neighbours because they don't like them, because they're part of a different gang. By recognising those bloodthirsty cockroaches, by recognising those ghastly terrorists, actually it almost scuppered the peace deal. Keir Starmer's in Parliament lying about how actually it helped it. Well, it didn't help it. And they accuse people of talking the country down. Well, they're taking the country down, which is a lot worse than talking it down. They're actually taking it down into the gutter, into the sewer, and further down into the depths and the bowels of the earth, from which it may never recover.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It Talk this from Simon. It's very simple. People talk about the economy and how bad we are economically. Illegal immigration is hitting our economy with 20 billion annually, and we now have 50 billion to 50 so-called black hole created by this government. Illegal immigration and the cost of it is directly linked to our economy. It is directly linked, and I mentioned among the many stories that kind of feed into what we've been talking about today was the fact that foreign nationals now make up 1 in 6 universal credit recipients. Now, you don't have to be left-wing or right-wing to go, well, that's probably not right, is it? There's probably something wrong there. 1.3 million migrants, most of whom don't have jobs, were given the benefit in July. They're the last figures they tapped into. Extraordinary. Andrew's in Gloucester. Andrew, what have you got for us? Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian. I've just been to the docks down in, we were saying about securing the borders. Surely the Navy, the English Navy, the Merchant Navy, call them what you want, they're the only people that can secure the borders. Now, I went into the docks this afternoon. I collect septic tank here, and you're going to laugh at this. I have to show my passport and my driving license.
To where? The doctors, did you say?
No, to get into the
docks.
The docks, yeah. The docks at Plymouth.
Okay.
Where they keep all the ships, the Merchant Navy.
Yeah.
So why, when I got there today, it's full. They're all moored up. The ships out in the Tamar River. Why aren't they securing the borders? That's what the taxpayer pays for.
The problem, the claim is, the problem is, if the Navy were there, what would they do with a boat of migrants coming across?
Take them all back.
And then the next question is, what do you do when you have a diplomatic incident with France?
I'm not sure.
I mean, don't get me wrong, on paper or in my heart, I don't really care about that, but I have a feeling there's probably some kind of implication.
Well, there probably is, there is. But, I mean, I just don't understand why they can't keep our... That's what they were there for. That's why they were made in the first instance, wasn't it? That's why we have the Navy, to keep our borders...
I think so. I think that's exactly, you know, if nothing else, it's at least part and parcel of the deal, right?
Well, you'd have thought so. But the other thing was, I thought, well, maybe they can't because they're spending all the money for the diesel in these ships on the immigrants. So maybe we can't afford to put these ships out to sea. I don't know.
Well, I don't think anybody does, but I'm pretty sure it's solvable somehow. Andrew, thank you very much indeed for that. I keep coming back to the pull factor. The pull factor is huge, and we know now we've kind of run out of hotels. We started off, people were going to like the Holiday Inn and stuff, and then they realised, well, they'd run out of the kind of 2 or 3 star hotels, so they ended up in the kind of 4-star hotels, and now they're overflowing, so people are now being put into fairly tasty apartments. And even if they weren't fairly tasty apartments, just it doesn't really matter. This story is not new. It's great when you see it on social media because you go, wow, look where this person's staying. There's a current viral video to that very effect. And you think, wow, that's interesting. But it's not new. I mean, this just goes on every single day. Regardless of whether you're being put in an HMO, a nice spanky dockside apartment, a 2-star hotel or a 4-star hotel, it's costing 20 billion quid a year. That's the overarching point here. Caroline is down in London. What are your thoughts, Caroline? Good afternoon.
Oh, hi, Ian. Great to talk to you. Please bear with me. I've got a few points.
I'm bearing.
I mean, well, where do we start with this? OK, so to start with, who do I trust who could sort our border out?
Yeah.
And actually, if I'm really honest, I don't trust any of them, and I'll tell you why. Our country, our parliament and our civil service are full of lawyers. You know, human rights lawyers. Even if Farage got in, and even if Farage wanted to do what he says he's going to do, which is not enough, in my opinion, because you won't be able to find a lot of these people. They can't trace thousands of people that have come in illegally. He's going to have a really hard time dealing with this. Yeah. The other issue is, I cannot understand this. As we speak, Greece is in the EU. It's actually in the EU, and they are sending migrants back. We're not in the EU, but we're so full of lawyers and NGOs and all the corruption throughout our whole civil service and government and everywhere else. And yet we can't do that. And the reason is there's no will to do it. They're not willing to do it. We don't have somebody really strong, and they haven't got the guts. And the other thing I'm angry about, this guy that's been put in prison for 5 years for threatening to kill Nigel Farage, he's committed 13 crimes, I think, in Sweden. He's
17,
illegal.
I think.
Why are you and me paying for him to get food and a bed in a prison?
Yeah.
Why haven't they got the guts to put him? He actually asked to go back to Afghanistan. Just deal with the consequences after. Put him on a plane and send him back. We are a joke. We are actually in Armageddon as we speak.
And powerful words to finish on, Caroline. Thank you very much. We are in Armageddon as we speak. An interesting line. Caroline, thank you. Down in London, 0344 499 1000. Comments on all of these stories, which rather dovetail into each other this afternoon. Overarching question, who do you trust to secure our borders? The answer to you might be obvious. Maybe who you don't trust. Lines are open. We're back with you in a couple of moments. Let's get the news headlines at 2 o'clock.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Super gripped indeed. It's a chocker hour on the way. Don't be going anywhere. We've got too much to get through. We'll bring you, by the way, the latest migrant stats, channel crossing stats in just a bit as well. What are we up to? We're just shy of 60,000 since Keir Starmer has been Prime Minister, which gives you some idea, bearing in mind he's only been there half an hour, gives you some idea of the enormity of the problem. Also this afternoon, the Home Secretary warning that Britain's border failures is eroding public trust. Really? She's a genius. Demanding tougher action and foreign cooperation as illegal migration surges. We know it's surging. This government and the last government has done nothing about it. In fact, it's got worse. Details to come. Also this afternoon, Ed Miliband has given the big fat green light to the UK's largest solar farm, despite forced labour concerns in the Chinese supply chain. He seems quite relaxed about that, Ed. You can get some old slave building, it doesn't really matter, as long as you can lob it in a British field. Sparked a bit of outrage, of course, over Labour's growing dependence on China. That's a whole other parallel story there. And disregard for British farmland too, 3,000 acres worth. That's just one of these farms. More on that too. And Donald Trump has vowed to disarm Hamas, promising swift action if the group does not surrender its weapons following reports of brutal executions in Gaza. His 20-point plan calls for Hamas leaders to leave and a board of peace to take over Gaza's governance. How will that work out? Well, we certainly hope it does, but we'll certainly watch with interest too. Everything you need to know. We'll bring you all the breaking news right here on Talk 0344 499 1000. Mary in Colchester says, love the show. Mahmood, the Home Secretary, borders out of control. Really? God, they're useless. But where are the Conservatives? Why aren't they on Labour's case relentlessly? Their hands are dirty too. So scared to pull at that thread. Both parties are lame ducks. Bring on an election and reform, says Mary in Colchester. It's a common view. I hear that all over the place. I mean, there'll be some people who vote in different ways who won't like that. The irredeemable reality is that is something you hear a lot. And I know working in national radio on a format such as, you might say, well, disproportionately, you'd hear it more than most. Yeah, but I also hear it in the pub. I hear it when I walk down the street and talk to people. I have a chinwag with some folk in Tesco or whatever. And I hear the same kind of line time and time again. Now, let's move to Ed Miliband. Talk about a bloke obsessed. He's approved the UK's biggest solar farm. Now, this is 3,000 acres. 3,000 acres in lovely Lincolnshire. That is the equivalent of 1,700 football pitches. I mean, we are talking seismic here. This is despite modern slavery concerns linked to China. And, of course, there's local opposition to this too. This is the countryside. It's a lovely area of our verdant land. Critics warn Labour's net zero drive is risking national security as well as farmland and countryside, while Reform UK pledges to scrap the project, branding it a threat to the countryside and food production. So whatever angle you come at this on, nobody should be ignoring this headline that we are potentially building solar farms that have been constructed in part by slaves in China. Eleanor Lyons is the UK's independent anti-slavery commissioner. Eleanor, good afternoon to you. Nice to have you with us. I mean, this, again, take the specific politics out of this, where, you know, net zero, somebody's over there, somebody's over there. I mean, this story is, you know, incredibly important for another reason, and that is that we could be constructing huge swathes of our land into solar farms that have been manufactured by modern-day slavery.
Yeah, so it's deeply concerning to see that the government has approved this rollout of a new solar farm, where we can see in the planning application that there were concerns outlined that the solar panels used are likely to be made with forced labour. A rollout of clean energy needs to be clean in every sense, and we need to make sure that this government is committed to tackling you know, kind of key issues with protecting vulnerable people right around the world.
When somebody like yourself and organisations similar contact the government and say, you might just want to have a closer look at what you're dealing with here, what kind of reply is there?
So I do regularly, as an independent commissioner, speak to government and try to hold them to account on these areas. For instance, in the Great British Energy Act, which has just been passed by this government, they said that they will not roll out supply chains in their kind of race to net zero, which are made with goods which have been manufactured in areas with high levels of forced labour. Sadly, this is a case that they don't seem to be taking seriously, and we're seeing this in the new solar farm in Lincolnshire. I think they are prioritising the race to net zero over human rights, and that's something that I think is particularly concerning.
Yeah, I mean, it is the 21st century. Have they not clocked that? I mean, you know, a couple of hundred years ago, all manner of horrible things were going on when it comes to slavery and abuse of human beings, whether it was boatloads of people being taken from their country, whether it was us over here sticking kids up chimneys and women in the most horrendous positions in society. We move forward and we learn from that kind of stuff. We apologise for that kind of stuff. It's not as if we haven't got precedents for what, you know, how horrendous the human condition sometimes is in its worst forms. So you might think this would be more than just an alarm bell. It would be a point when you go, right, OK, well, get our solar panels elsewhere because there's a fella in Bournemouth makes them. He can do it, or something like that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So sadly, slavery is not just in the history books. Over 50 million people are living globally in modern day slavery, and over 27 million of those are in labour exploitation. The UK is incredibly behind with how we treat this issue compared to our international partners. America and the EU have taken steps to protect their markets from becoming dumping grounds from goods made with forced labour, and this government has not taken those steps. So we have less protection in our law, and you're seeing some of the consequences from this in the fact that we're rolling out across the British countryside solar farms, which we know are likely to be made in areas where there's forced labour in the Xinjiang region.
And finally, Eleanor, is that it then? Do we have to just roll over and go, OK, here's some solar panels. They're made by slaves. Some of them don't make it through the week. Others are just exhausted. Either way, they're abused in some form or another. We've just got to run with it because Ed Miliband is more obsessed with that target than looking at the human rights issue.
So in my independent role, I'm not taking no for an answer on this, and I'm doing a new piece of work on exactly this area, looking at what legislation is needed in the United Kingdom for us to catch up with our international partners. British businesses can't compete with companies that can undercut them because they're using forced labour. We need new legislation on mandatory human rights due diligence and sensible controls so that we're making sure that all the goods that are purchased in the United Kingdom are not made by some of the most vulnerable slaves in China.
Eleanor, thank you for your time. Really appreciate that. Eleanor Lyons, the UK's Independent Anti-Slavery Commissioner. Let's get a word from Councillor Sean Matthews. Sean is the leader of Lincolnshire County Council for Reform UK. Good to see you, Sean. Thank you for coming in.
Yeah, good to be here.
When I was a kid, because I was born in Scunthorpe, and so I'm just up the road, what I was told about Lincolnshire and fields by my mum and dad is that every field is full of potatoes. Of course, that was staple of Lincolnshire. Potato producers known the world and the country over. It's a different picture in the 21st century because replace those spuds for panels. Not just a few of them, 3,000 acres worth. What the hell is going on?
Well, I hope not. As far as I'm concerned, our farmland should be used for farming, for food, and not for creating electricity. And it's an unbelievably big area that we're talking about. 3,000 acres for this one, which is Tilbridge solar panel.
This is just one, we should say. This is just one.
So there's a whole set, and up to 16,000 acres around this area of beautiful Lincolnshire countryside that is going to be turned into a mirror.
And it's interesting to sort of gauge it for some kind of context. This is the size of 1,700 football pitches.
Yes, that's right. It's enormous. It's difficult to comprehend.
If you've ever been on a full-size football pitch, it's like the first time you ever see a full-size snooker table, isn't it? You go, blimey, that's bigger than I thought. A full-size football pitch is massive. 1,700 of them.
Yeah. Yeah,
I mean, this is vast. How did this... So what's the deal with planning on something like this? We can't build a house without, somebody somewhere saying, no, you can't do that. There's a newt in that bush, or there's, a bat might fly over at night. But somehow you can stick 3,000 acres worth of solar panels. How does that get through the process?
Well, don't talk about bats to me, because I'm fighting that as well. But yeah, it's an NSIP. It's called a Nationally Significant Infrastructure Plan and Project. And they are forced through by the government.
So they usurp anything?
They usurp everything. Yeah, so as much as I don't want it, as much as the local district council don't want it, and as much as the people of Lincolnshire don't want it, it's just like it was yesterday, rubber stamped by Ed Miliband. And it's really, really, really disappointing. It's literally vandalism of our countryside.
Well, yeah, but here's the thing, Sean. This is what Ed Miliband, if he was sitting over here, and I would love him to be sitting over here, if he was sitting over here, he would say, Sean, Ian, no, sorry guys, you're missing the point. We're saving the planet. So it might be a bit of jip that the residents of Lincolnshire have got to cope with, but they can go to bed at night going, they've saved not just wildlife, they've saved our children's future.
Well, I don't know about...
I nearly sang Kumbaya at the end there.
Well, I don't know about saving wildlife. I think they're quite destructive to wildlife, especially the wind turbines. But I want a cleaner environment. I want my grandchildren to grow up in a nicer world. But we are rushing into this, and I think there's technologies coming along like step fusion, which is just the other side, just the other side of Gainsborough, where there's technology coming along that is green, really powerful and safe. And you're talking about ruining thousands of acres of farmland for something that's going to be a temporary measure. And what we say in reform is, yeah, we look at the bigger picture, we look into the distance and say, let's slow things down a little bit, and let's just wait and see. And then we don't need to have these, ridiculous solar farms and pylons and battery storage facilities.
So this is this kind of like the Betamax of the kind of green experiment, as it were?
The square-reel.
Yeah, the square-reel. Did you ever have a square-reel?
No. Nor a Betamax. I went mainstream.
You went mainstream. You were there. I mean, what's fascinating about this and this whole argument, because it sort of polarises opinion, Sean, doesn't it? And when people, well, you don't care about the planet. I don't know anyone, reform or members or anyone, that doesn't want to clean a planet. It's a stupid question. Of course we want to clean a planet. The idea that, buses and cars don't pollute like they used to is fantastic. We all know what it used to be like, smoggy cities and, back before, even before we were kids,
Steady.
Yeah, I know. But, it's got better, and we all support that. And if there's a parallel energy source that is going to be as efficient and cleaner and ultimately cheaper, I'd be the first to vote for it.
Me too.
And just run it, slowly catchy monkey sort of style, so you're not kind of just obliterating your economy and your countryside. See how it runs, see how it rolls. In fact, I think even China are doing that at the moment. I know they're big on solar panels, well, they make them, we know that much, but even in their own country. But they haven't stopped doing all the other stuff. They've still got their furnaces, they've still got their oil, they've still got their coal, because they've worked on the very sense, well, we'll run it in the background, and then if it turns out to be right, we'll adopt it. If it doesn't, we'll think of something else.
Yeah, that's right. All those solar panels that are being built questionably by slave labour are being created by electricity that's used using coal-fired power stations to create them, and then they stick them on a diesel ship and ferry them across here. It's hardly clean, is it?
You wouldn't think so. What's going to happen though if, the other story we've been talking about today, Sean, is that this poll, which you would have been encouraged to see, that has put reform yet again in, every poll does this, but this one was, particularly extraordinary to see in terms of the numbers. The Tories reduced to 7 seats in Parliament, 445 seats for reform. This is not an area, solar panels and wind turbines, that reform are, they've made no apology for it, are not exactly enamoured by. So does that mean that a reform government would dig up the solar panels?
Well, yeah,
and should I start a solar panel removal company in Lincolnshire?
Well, that's not a bad shout.
I was going to say, I could have it ready. It'd be a bit quiet for a couple of years, but who knows?
Look, I don't believe that poll. I can't imagine for 1 minute that Labour are going to get 73 seats.
Yeah.
So, and you told...
What, you mean that many or that few?
Yeah, no, that many, yeah. And you're always told never to smile about a poll that looks really good for you, but
that's true.
You can't help but grin at that one. No, look, we've made it clear that if you're investing in these types of things, when the Reform government take over in a few years' time, you're going to lose your money. Yeah. It's as simple as that. Yeah. We're not going to keep subsidising all these projects. We're not going to help, and we're going to cancel all the projects that we can. So, don't invest in them because you're going to lose your money, and we're giving you fair warning.
What's the mood like at Lincolnshire County Council in those meetings, and what is the Green representation in your neck of the woods?
We don't have any Green councillors. We've got 44...
I think even Kent has one.
We've got 44 reform councillors out of 70, so it's fairly comfortable, a majority. Yeah. All of us are loving it. It's for me, it's a privilege of a lifetime.
I'm sure it is. Can you make a deal? Because that was the same. I'm from Kent, so Kent County Council, of course, was one of the, along with yourselves.
Linda's great.
Yeah, very. Yeah, and I know so many of the guys down there doing incredible work. But there are obvious limitations. Even in county councils are big. You have big budgets. It's not like it's not the parish council. And fair play, by the way, to people who run parish councils. But
absolutely.
It's because that's also could be a thankless task, especially when you're next door, but one neighbour keeps knocking knocking on the door asking what you can do about the drains. But that's another story. In terms of running a county council, it's tricky. It's not easy, and there are still limitations on what you can and can't do.
Well, there's certainly limitations on what we can do with NSIPs and these sorts of solar panel projects. And we are limited in that we are so much in debt, thanks to 25 years of Tory mismanagement, as it were, previous to our taking over. So we have that baggage to deal with as well. But we're making savings. We've found ways of narrowing the debt that we've got. We've reduced that already. We are looking at making savings, reducing waste, and that's what we stood on. That was the agenda that we put forward
100%.
during our election. So we are standing by what we said we would do.
And finally, Sean, just back to that issue, council meetings, solar panels. What are the other parties in opposition saying? What are the, I mean, Labour obviously wouldn't agree with you. They would be backing their man, Ed. What about the Tories? Where do they sit on this one?
Well, I think they would be fairly much in line with us, but they would never admit that because
wouldn't say it out loud.
No, because they're the opposition and they're there to hold us to account. So, but you know, we're probably on the same page.
Sean, great to see you. Thank you for coming in. That's Councillor Sean Matthews. He is, of course, the leader of Lincolnshire County Council for Reform UK. Thank you to him. Over to you, 0344 499 1000.
Group of women.
Somebody with 17 convictions in Sweden. In 18 months' time, he will be in this country, living in a house of multiple occupancy or a hotel. He'll be free to walk the streets whilst his asylum claim is being judged. And the only reason we know about this guy is because somebody sent it to me on TikTok. And it makes me wonder, how many other Madapassers are there now in this country, or will there be as the boats continue to cross the channel?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Liam says, funny, I can't cut a tree down because of bats, but they can destroy thousands of acres of land for panels. Is it going to... Just a naive question. Is it going to work? I mean, if you have 3 1,000 acres of solar panels. I mean, the level of infrastructure and engineering and construction and putting it together involved is absolutely massive. Does that mean, in theory, the whole of Lincolnshire are going to have free energy now? Okay, once you've got to pay for the stuff, but yeah, broadly speaking, they're going to get free energy. It's going to come from the sunshine. Is that it? Is that the answer? Free energy, all the time. No, oil. No, none of that. You've got the sunshine. If that is the case, then I think a lot of people will go, yeah, I'd support that. Just do one in every county. We've all got free electricity. In fact, you don't get any bills anymore. It's all free. I just don't think that's how it's going to pan out somehow. Mark is in Lincolnshire. What have you got for us, Mark? Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian, mate. Yeah, bloody fuming.
It's your neck of the woods, this.
Yeah, exactly.
How far away are you from the panel fest?
I mean, there's some not too far outside of town. I'm in Boston.
This is Tilbridge, where this is going to be.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure the distance-wise of it, but it's a little way, I think, from here.
Yeah.
But my concern mostly with it, to be honest with you, Ian, is more the impact. I mean, Lincolnshire itself already has thousands of acres of these bloody things. They've already taken, well, I don't know quite exactly how many acres are already taken by them, but there's quite a lot. Because it's prime ground for people like bloody Miliband, isn't it? Because it's nice and flat and it's, you know, you've got acres and acres of this stuff, you know, thousands of acres of flat land. So it's ideal if you want to put solar panels on, you know, the ground here. My problem with it is that Lincolnshire's always been kind of regarded as the kind of a breadbasket of Britain, in so much as, you know, your things like your cabbages, your parsnips, you know, broccoli, all this kind of stuff. That's what's always been grown here. We provide, I believe, it's somewhere like 60-70% of the supply comes from Lincolnshire.
Well, I mentioned potatoes at the beginning. When I grew up, that's my knowledge of Lincolnshire was that's where you get your potatoes from.
Yeah, you get quite a lot of spuds around here.
Spudsville.
It's, you know, we're basically cutting our own throat at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Because you're drastically going to, you know, lessen the food supply that we can do ourselves. So you're going to start having to import more, which has even more of an ecological, you know, strain on the globe if that's, you know, if you're that way inclined. You know, it's the same as all this stuff, you know, when you're shipping in all the liquefied gas and all that stuff, yeah? You know, that's all being shipped thousands of miles across the ocean using diesel-powered blooming ships and what have you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the insanity of people like Ed Miliband is just beyond me, to be honest. But it's also, as well, the scientific element of this, because when I looked into all this stuff, you know, the science is quite clear on this. Once you start putting solar panels, you know, into the earth, into particularly farmland, that land is never going to really be used as farmland again, because the chemicals that come off as these things start to decay, these panels decay, is so toxic. I mean, some scientists put it alongside of it as if you'd spread nuclear waste on your land. That's how bad it can get with some of these panels.
Wow.
Now, this is the problem that I really have deep down with, you know, the whole eco thing. You've got clowns doing this stuff now for absolutely zero reason. You know, there's no real proof that climate change is even happening to the extent that these people claim it is. You know, because they hide so much of the data anyway. But, as I say, I was saying there, from the research I was looking into from various scientists, you know, if this is true, which seems to be more the case, if this is true, you're not just impacting what happens now, you're going to impact things for future generations.
What if it what if it works, Mark? I mean,
it isn't going to work.
I've got no evidence for this, by the way. But what if we suddenly go, everyone in Lincolnshire has got free electricity?
But when's the last time you've been to Lincolnshire, Ian? It's mostly bloody cloudy around here. I'm not being funny. It is.
So
I mean, it's literally. It's just sheet clouds
would somebody not have spotted that in the planning? I mean, I know we are talking about fairly inept people here with Miliband's office.
Well, you know how these idiots roll, Ian. they don't think about stupid things like that. They just go, this will be a great idea.
I mean, you'd have thought that if that was their theory, that it's got to be very then, I don't know, Hampshire or Sussex would have been their choice.
That would have been more, I would have thought, the logical thing would be, that would probably be the best place to put them.
Yeah.
But, from my experience, I mean, for goodness sakes, all we ever do around here is complain about the wind, the rain and the cloud.
Yeah.
We don't get that much blooming sunshine. My final point on this that I want to say was just, Keir Starmer's father was a toolmaker.
Was he?
Well, what I'd like to say is he must have fathered the entire Labour Party, because a whole bloody lot of them's a bunch of tools.
There it is.
As far as I'm concerned.
I like it. Thank you, Mark, for that. Mark in Lincolnshire. Matt's in Cheshire. What are your thoughts then, Matt? What's going on with our borders? The Home Secretary thinks they're not secure.
Just on what the last guy just said.
Yeah.
Box of tools, toolbox.
Toolbox.
Not a bunch. Well, have we not learned yet that everything that 90% of politicians say is total drivel? Do you remember when Theresa May was a tough Home Secretary?
Yeah.
How did that work out? The Tories let more people into Britain than anyone in our history.
Yeah. And she sliced the police force in half.
So this idea that Labour has suddenly now found this taskmaster, tough, compromising the Tom Homan of the Labour Party, it's absolute lunacy. Their whole purpose of being in government is to let as many illegal immigrants into Britain as possible, just like Joe Biden did. One, to change the country demographically, and two, to make it as difficult for the next person who comes into power to
reverse it. Do you think, that is often said, and, we know that there was, comments in the past about rubbing the right's nose in it and that kind of stuff. Do you think this government, as they sit there today, in cabinet meetings, where nobody can hear them, do you think they secretly discuss getting more people in while pretending to address the problem?
That's my exact point, Ian. We've become desensitized to it, like we're all mental, and we just say, oh yeah, they've got a new one in now. She's a right tough nut. She's going to sort it out.
Yeah, she's
on
great.
The flip side, they're all just laughing at us. We believe it for a couple of days, and then there's 1,000 people coming over weekly, and they deported 26 people.
Yeah.
It's absolute madness here. They've all got to go. And, obviously, like everybody says every day, every other caller says to you, the sooner the better. But I'd just like to ask, who believed this government when they were voting for it?
Well, I know there was a kind of, a lot of it was about anything but the Conservatives. But I could never quite work out, even if that was your theory, anything but the Conservatives. I think I'd have probably voted Green on that basis rather than for the Labour. At least I know what they stand for. But I could never quite fathom how Keir Starmer was the chief recipient of the Tories' woes. To me, that was and remains a bit of a confusion. Matt, I've got to step in, as I'm sure you're aware. Time is upon us. Thank you to Matt in Cheshire. More calls on the way. 0344 499 1000. Just gone 2:30. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
523 on Talk. Let's move to this story. This is fascinating stuff. We can reasonably headline this, and I'm borrowing the headline from a piece that's been written by our next guest, Inside Britain's Socialist Dogfight. Because that's not yet getting the headlines up until fairly recently that it should do. Because this is the World Transformed Conference in Manchester, presented a united front on Gaza and progressive causes, with the Greens and Your Party, are they called Your Party officially, eyeing up to 50 seats. But behind the scenes, Jeremy Corbyn's Your Party was mired in factional infighting, leadership rifts and rows over MP loyalty and trans rights. Many insiders have called it a bin fire. Let's speak with Max Jeffrey, online commissioning editor at The Spectator. Good afternoon to you, Max. Nice to have you with us. I feel almost as if I missed Christmas by missing out on this particular conference, but I wasn't there, but I was able to read your article, which illuminated what is, I think, a massive story on the political stage right now, and that is the dogfight of the left, as you put it.
Ian, you really did miss out. It was a strange weekend in Manchester. The World Transformed Conference, as you said, it's kind of a get-together of Britain's socialists. Started when Jeremy Corbyn was leader of the Labour Party, and it's continued since. And this year's, as you say, was really interesting because we've got the Greens and Your Party, who feel like they've really caught a moment, what with the war in Gaza and with trans activism. And with what they think is a general mood of anti-capitalism. And so these three forces have kind of come together, and they think that they're in the ascendancy, but really behind it all, when you talk to people involved in Your Party, Corbyn's new outfit, you realise that things aren't as rosy as they'd like you to think they are. Yeah, I mean, we saw just on the Corbyn Party thing, so it is now literally called Your Party, is it? I know that there was some issues around the name to begin with. Is that now the official name for Corbyn's party? Well, for now, we need to call it Your Party, but they've got their founding conference in November, in which I believe they'll come up with a new name. Zara Sultana, who's one of the co-leaders with Jeremy Corbyn, the MP for Coventry South, she wants it to be called the Left Party. Corbyn and his allies have other ideas. It's kind of one of the many pieces of this, which is a bit of a mess. Yeah, I mean, Your Party is a bit rubbish. The Left Party is a little bit sort of almost satirical in some respects. But either way, I mean, what we are seeing is a bit of a battle going on here. So there's the battle within the left, and of course that divides the Labour Party under Keir Starmer. So there's a similar thing that's going on, perhaps not to such an extent, as going on the right. But it's not getting the headlines just yet, as it I guess will do as we move forward. Is it a serious threat to Labour? I don't think it is, to be honest. I mean, the natural supporters for Your Party are the kinds of people you'll see on TV and your newspapers every day who are going to these Gaza protests. I mean, those I expect are likely to die down a bit, and also naturally, as seems to be the case with all socialist parties, there is infighting, there are splits. Their constituency is kind of split all over the place. It's mainly in urban areas, but also there's a Muslim vote which is part of it. So they're not really that well connected. These people don't get on. There are socialists, communists, anarchists all chipping in. I personally don't see it going anywhere. I wonder, because, you know, independent MPs or new MPs tend not to get elected very often, although, you know, in fairness to Jeremy Corbyn, he is an independent MP, but he has been isn't an MP for about 115 years, so he's, you know, he's part of the fabric over there in North London, so he managed to hoover up the seat as an independent, which is, you know, fair play, it's a democracy and all that business. I don't know how many others could do something similar, and if you come from a new party, as Reform know, and they might do better at the next election, but they know how tough it was. They've had to fight a few elections before they managed to even get 5 people in Parliament. And what's very difficult with Your Party is that, so you have Jeremy Corbyn and Zara Sultana, who are kind of avowed declared socialists, and then the other 4 members are the so-called Gaza independents. So these were guys who were elected in places like Leicester, Blackburn, Birmingham. largely elected because of their opposition to Israel's war in Gaza by a large constituency of Muslim voters. And the problem is that there isn't complete alignment on what your party's policies, therefore, should be on issues such as transgender rights. Jeremy Corbyn and Zara Sultana are very pro, but naturally, some of the more conservative Muslim voters who have elected the so-called Gaza independents don't quite agree on that. And so there are going to be problems, and you're already beginning to see this, of how do they fit these two things together? And I think it's going to be a real issue going forward, especially, and I think it's going to come out more into the open when this party has its founding conference in November.
Yeah. And what are you making of the Greens? They have this new fella, Zach Polanski, whose real name, I think, is Sean Smith or something. But it sounds a little bit more... it sounds a bit more impactful, maybe. Sounds like somebody, Zach Polanski, and he's going to make a difference. Green populism, I mean, that seems to be a phrase I keep hearing. Is he likely to penetrate the zeitgeist in any meaningful way?
I think he's a much better communicator than either Jeremy Corbyn or Zara Sultana is. I think anyone who can think back to Jeremy Corbyn's days as leader of the Labour Party knows that it doesn't take much to beat him in that regard. Zach Polanski is really keen to do some kind of a pact with your party. I was at an event at the World Transformed where Zach was there on stage with Zara Sultana. He even said to Zara Sultana, come on, please join the Greens. You'd be a natural fit for our party. We could work together. But as you might expect, Zara Sultana said absolutely not. She then went into a full-on broadside against the Greens, saying, why don't you want Britain to leave NATO? X, Y and Z, other problems with the Greens party policies. I think Zach Polanski is a more credible threat to Labour, but the way that they could really make inroads would be if they worked together with your party, but I think that's going to be difficult for all concerned. And
it's also, and you'll be more aware of this than most, Max, you can't really overstate just how, and I'm not saying this to be smart or just obviously critical, but you can't overstate just how left-wing some of these people are, like the Zaras of this world. The kind of left-wingism that when you're about 16 you might flirt with for half an hour and think, oh, that sounds like a thing to do. If it's against what my mum and dad think, then maybe that must be a good thing. And you get a bit rebellious and you see injustice everywhere, and then you grow up and move on. These people never left that phase, and they then sort of doubled down on that phase. I mean, these people are uber left, super left, extremely left.
No, and you're completely right. I mean, make no mistake, there are avowed communists among this group who are who believe this stuff all their lives, and they still really, really do. I spoke to one guy at the conference who had been a radical environmentalist in the 1980s. He was kind of wistfully remembering his glory days. He said he had got burnout from protesting too much, but now, because of the war in Gaza, he was inspired to come back and rejoin the movement. You're completely right.
But they will always continue to fight a battle, even if one doesn't exist, because that's part of. I've always argued that part of the sort of left-wing thinking is that it only works if there's an enemy, right? I mean, there has to be an enemy of some kind, and if you can't find one, you kind of make one up almost. It's like the proverbial St. George anecdote of constantly trying to slay the next dragon when he successfully slayed the first one. I mean, that's how it works. It's a perpetual belief system. You have to constantly believe that iniquity and injustice is on your doorstep and needs fighting.
Totally, and it's an all-consuming one too. There was one event at this conference which really made me laugh, which was called Madness Under Capitalism. And it was all about how our economic system has driven people into a plethora of mental disorders, how therapy itself was a kind of capitalist stooge. Wow. It was just amazing. You kind of couldn't believe it.
Yeah. Are you going back next year for the World Transformed Conference, do you think? I mean, I'm bound to ask, Max, whenever I talk to anyone who attended any political conference, what's often most interesting is what are the bars like in the evening? What's the kind of small talk like when everybody's sort of relaxing a little bit, having a few beers. Apparently the Tory conference is quite a good place to be for those. Labour, it's all right. They're, still on a bit of a high, but not as they were last year. What about the Transformed conference? What's the social scene like over there?
There was a lot less drinking beers or boozing. They were drinking things called club mates, which I was told a kind of tea-based soda, which is very popular among trendy people in Berlin. So I guess that's no surprise.
If somebody said to me, would you like a tea-based soda, I don't know what I'd do, but I'd certainly be leaving fairly soon. What a rock and roll night you had there, Max. Lovely to have you on with us, though. Max Jeffrey, online commissioning editor at The Spectator, written a brilliant piece called Inside Britain's Socialist Dogfight. It will be interesting. I don't think, as Max just said, I don't think they're going to do to Starmer what Reform have done to the Conservatives. It ain't that powerful. Jeremy Corbyn may get re-elected. The Sultana woman probably won't. I don't know that. They might get close in a few areas, but in terms of substantial damage, I mean, Labour are doing that to themselves, but I don't see this sort of dividing the left in the same way that Reform has divided the right, if that is the right way to phrase it. Let's go on that very issue of Reform and associated matters. Jackie is in Oldham on our borders. Jackie, what have you got for us? Afternoon to you.
Afternoon, Ian. I think the problem with immigration is that before Reform came along, we had a parliament that was pro-migration. I mean, if you look at the Lib Dems, the SNP, the Greens, they've all been pro-migration. And the two main parties, Labour and Tories, have talked the talk, but they've not walked the walk. And like you said earlier, they've blamed everything. Oh, well, we can't do this because of this reason. We can't do that. And we've been gaslit for the last 25 years. The reason why I think Reform will make inroads on protecting our border is because they've already looked at all the things that are causing the obstacles of why we can't protect our border, whether it be the ECHR, whether it be the treaties like the UN Refugee Convention that we're signed up to, whether it be our own legislation like the Human Rights Act. They've already looked at all of this, and they've already pledged that whatever obstacle gets in their way that means they cannot protect the borders, they will legislate, they will repeal, or they will remove us from these binding arrangements that stop us from fulfilling. And I truly believe, because Nigel Farage has been talking about this for many, many years, he's been very consistent. If you look at the Tories, what they said and what they did, I mean, we had the biggest migration into the country in our history. And it took them a year to decide to leave the ECHR. But the ECHR alone will not fix it.
Correct.
You've got to do other things.
Correct. Well, they worked on the basis, I think, Jackie, that, you know, for years, and even under Blair, oddly, you know, immigration was a small and manageable number that nobody really noticed, and one or two people did, and the main parties were quite happy to say, well, you know, OK, a few people on the right might have a whinge, but broadly speaking, it's fine. And it wasn't fine, by the way, back then, not to the numbers, but they were... what they haven't kept up with is the speed with which it's increased in the last 10, 15 years.
Absolutely.
But they've got the same policy or same approach to it.
Yeah, I mean, and what is the most telling is the only people that are talking about calling it a national emergency are Reform, which will give them the powers to be able to get this problem under control. No other party will touch that. They talk about it, but they won't do it. And the thing is, if you look at Labour, they voted 85 times against migration control when the Tories were in power.
I'm sure.
So you've got to look at not what they say, what they do.
Spot on. Jackie, what they do will always be the ultimate test. Thank you. Great call from Jackie in Oldham. More from you in a couple of moments. 03444991000. Plus, day 2 of the new Voice of Doom. It's the political mystery. I think it's day 2, isn't it? Yeah, political mystery voice with I don't know what I was going to say then. It's the political mystery voice with the obvious caveat that it could be somebody who is either still with us, somebody who's, you know, from way back. You decide. We'll play you that voice in a couple of moments. Don't be going anywhere. This is Talk.
Somebody with 17 convictions in Sweden. In 18 months' time, he will be in this country, living in a house of multiple occupancy or a hotel. He'll be free to walk the streets whilst his asylum claim is being judged. And the only reason we know about this guy is because somebody sent it to me on TikTok. And it makes me wonder, how many other Madapassers are there now in this country, or will there be as the boats continue to cross the channel?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, 0344 499 1000. Gaynor in Nottinghamshire says, great show, referenced Starmer's mentality when talking about stopping growing our own food and utilising our own energy supplies, basically being self-sufficient and importing instead. That's comparable with, instead of walking to your local supermarket to buy some milk, you drive hundreds of miles to buy the same milk from Fortnum and Mason, spending extra money for something you have local to you. Absolutely devoid of common sense, says Gaynor. And you have to really, to try and, thank you, Gaynor, for that, you have to try and get into a kind of their mindset that they haven't got their head around the current appetite that people have in terms of our thinking, our needs, logic, common sense. They're running on an old script. Labour and the Conservatives, and that's where it's gone horrendously wrong for them. A couple of voice notes on the way. We'll talk to Chris in a second as well. Voice of Doom, it's day 2. It's the mystery voice with a political angle. Have a listen to this.
And I was extremely disappointed.
Who is that? If you think you know, 87222, here it is again.
And I was extremely disappointed.
The usual T's and C's apply. Don't phone in, there is no prize, but you can message if you want to. If we get a correct answer, we will reveal all on the other side of the news. Here it is one more time.
And I was extremely disappointed.
Yeah, but who are you, mate? 87222. We'll talk to Chris in just a second. Let's get a voice note firstly on Ed Miliband and Lincolnshire. This is Hannah.
Ian, great show. I just want to make a point. My family live in Lincolnshire and our friends include quite a few food producers, veg, fruit and obviously wheat and grain. This government and the previous one have made it so unprofitable and so expensive to produce food that what they've done is they've eventually sold land for solar panels. And now we've got Mad Ed Miliband plastering countryside with these slave labour solar panels, which bring with it trucks, pollution. It's just nothing about this is good or clean, and we are going to be reliant on foreign imports for food, and that is no good way to be. But of course, Mad Ed Miliband and all his friends, that's exactly what they want, and we all need to wake up very, very quickly. And of course, isn't today just a wonderful sunny day? What an absolute shower.
What a car crash. Hannah, great call. Thank you very much indeed. On the same issue, here's Trevor.
A quick question. If anyone else was complicit in modern slavery, they would be arrested and charged straight away. So when it comes to these gigantic solar farms that will destroy our farmland, why isn't there even an investigation into Ed Miliband and his ignoring of possible modern slavery in another country? I find it really bewildering.
I tell you what, Trevor, you're bang on. I mean, it's beyond incredible. Can you only imagine the noise Labour would be making if it turned out the Tories had struck some deal with an organisation that were using slaves to produce a product? I mean, could be riots on the flipping street, for God's sake. Ed's fine with this, fine with a bit of... loves a bit of slavery. As our Ed can't even get out of bed unless he thinks there's a slave involved in the manufacturing of his bedroom. It's a grim reality being in Ed's world. Let's talk to Chris in Epsom. Chris, what have you got for us? Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian. Well, we had a marvellous lesson today in obfuscation by a person that is not a leader and shouldn't be a lawyer. It was ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. He not only argued one point at the beginning of the...
You're talking about China here, yeah?
Yeah, of course, Starmer, right? He said one thing at the beginning, one thing at the end. Then he quoted part of a speech by Kimmy Badenoch, who I'm not a great lover of, but she'd ended it. He took out the fact that she said, I hesitate or I'm worried about calling them a threat. But then at the end of it, said she had to call them a threat to the nation. I mean, it's absolutely ludicrous. And then we got Shabama Mahmood, who's going to stop at nothing. Ian, do you remember this? She's going to stop at nothing.
Stop at nothing. Sort out the Channel migrant crossings. Yeah.
This is the same Shabama Mahmood that was filmed 10 years ago on Lampedusa, the Italian island, welcoming the migrants from Africa. Yep. And the same Shabama Mahmood that was seen protesting outside of Sainsbury's because they sold goods that were produced in Israel.
Yep.
Well,
there's no real consistency to some of these guys, and I suppose the only thing that frightens me about that is that does something happen when you get in office where someone goes, you know what, these are the things you can and cannot say, not in a kind of James Bondy style, but if you don't take these lines, it's too much trouble. We can't get the country working if you dwell on this, that, or the other.
Ian, any minister that goes in and listens to a private secretary or a civil servant minister that says you can't do this, a bit like we used to watch and laugh at Yes Minister, any minister that puts up with that should not have the job.
100%, 100%. Chris, we stop there because the news is upon us. Thank you, mate. Always good to talk to Chris in Epsom. Brad's in Cambridge, the Tories' lack of commitment to reducing migration or anything else under Johnson was there for all to see when he wrote both pro and anti articles for Brexit. Nigel's aim has been unwavering from the outset. I mean, no one can take that away from Farage, can they? That's been his position from the very beginning. It's not like a policy suddenly, whipped out of thin air. It's been central to everything that he stood for. And he comes at that from a political, patriotic angle. That's his view. You can disagree with him all you like, but you can't say he hasn't been consistent. Have another listen to the voice of doom.
And I was extremely disappointed.
If you think you know who that is, 87222. Back after this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is indeed the home of common sense. Welcome back. Coming up on 3 minutes after 3 o'clock. Loads up and running here at the moment, including the Home Secretary warning that Britain's border failures are eroding trust in politics. That's like saying, do you know night? Yeah, it follows day. Wow. She's demanding tougher action and foreign cooperation. Illegal migration is surging. I think we can get the numbers, Finn, can't we, of the latest under Keir Starmer crossing the channel. How many is it up to so far? We'll bring that to you shortly. Also this afternoon, Ed Miliband has okayed the UK's largest solar farm despite forced labour concerns in the Chinese supply chain, as Chris was saying and others in the last section. It would be extraordinary. Sorry, it wasn't Chris, I think it was Hannah that made the point, that you would get away with this as a government in any shape or form, but they kind of sort of have done. It has sparked a bit of an outrage over Labour's growing dependence on China, as well as a little matter of a disregard for the British countryside and farming, it should be said. And Gen Z are twice as likely to suffer poor mental health as millennials, with 51 affected compared to 20% in 2009. 51% affected compared to 20% in 2009. NHS services are overwhelmed as cases of depression and anxiety soar, blamed on economic inequality, poor sleep, digital technology and stricter school policies. That's an interesting one. 0344 499 1000. I said the stricter school policy. What is that exactly? All I know as a parent is, and I wasn't really, well, I was half prepared for this because my little boy started secondary school in September, and I didn't realise that the homework the amount of homework was going to just suddenly become such. It's like an avalanche of stuff, you know, and obviously everything's checked online now, and you can check it as well as they check it. And you look through it and you think, are you up on it? And this week they're going into half term. They've got some tests going on, and it's relentless. It's relentless. You can't rely on 11-year-old, certainly my 11-year-old, you can't rely on him to remember what he's got to do every day. Once in a while, he'll say, I mean, he told me last week, he's done his, the French test has been done. It's been done. Conversation in the kitchen. This is a kid in denial. Have you done your French test? Yeah, done the French test. Oh, really? You did it? I didn't see. Yeah, did it. The teacher said, let's get it out the way. I thought, well, that's good. Okay. Done the French test. Monday morning, what are you doing today? French test. What, sorry? You just told me you'd done it. And the reason I raise that is because when they talk about stricter school policies being a problem for mental health, that's the bit I half get. Because you don't keep on. There's all the clubs and the stuff. And if he goes to football after school, can he do his homework? I mean, the list goes on. We'll talk about that story. And I think the school thing may be more profound, as I'm saying it out loud, than I'd first realised. Details on the way. By the way, Channel migrants under Keir Starmer, 59,602. 59,602. So I keep saying we're just shy of 60,000. This time next week we'll be well over the 60,000 mark. That is not a good look. 2025 alone, 36,000. Crossings in September, over 5,000. For October alone, we're not even halfway, we're just about halfway through today. 2,278. I mean, numbers are through the roof. We see it all the time. We're no longer shocked. Now, let's move to this story. Donald Trump vowing to disarm Hamas, promising swift action if the group does not surrender its weapons. This is following reports of brutal executions taking place in Gaza. This is Donald Trump's 20-point plan, calling for Hamas leaders to leave and a board of peace to take over Gaza's governance. Let's speak to Jotam Kofino, who's Middle East correspondent. He's in Herzliya in Israel, joining us now. Jotam, good afternoon to you. Nice to have you with us. Just give us a sense, firstly. How is Israel feeling a couple of days on from that momentous moment when Trump and others turned up to that big signing, of course, in Egypt, but, you know, the big moment in Israel. Is there a tangible sense of calm?
I would say yes. Of course, Monday was a huge day because the 20 hostages who are still alive were released. But today, for example, and yesterday, that joy kind of shifted to sadness and to grief because we started seeing the bodies of the remaining hostages coming out. And today we saw a horrible example again of Hamas placing the body of a Palestinian inside a coffin instead of a hostage. So, of course, this is something that worries a lot of Israelis. Are they actually going to get the remaining 20 bodies out? And when they see Hamas walking around with Kalashnikovs executing people left and right, really trying to reassert their control, that's something that worries Israelis a lot. But for now, I would say there's hope, especially when they hear Donald Trump speak in very certain terms about what's going to happen, that eventually there will be a stabilization force that's going to go into Gaza and take over their weapons.
Yeah. The Board of Peace, as Mr. Trump has referred to it as, it sounds great. Of course, what's written on paper is very different to what often actually happens. How achievable is this? Are Hamas, bearing in mind everything you've just said, Jotam, are Hamas likely to make this an easy transition, if that's the way to look at it?
No, they're not. They're not going to give up without a fight. And I'm one of those who, I wouldn't say that I'm, let me put it like this. For 2 years straight, Israel has had probably the biggest challenge in modern warfare, trying to root out Hamas from civilian infrastructure above ground and below ground. Now it's up to the international community to finish the job. Israel has done 90% of it. It's going to be very difficult. You cannot go in there and expect Hamas terrorists to just hand over their Kalashnikovs. They will most likely try to fight this. So unless this international stabilization force is ready to confront Hamas violently and to sometimes engage in shootings and perhaps also lose some of their soldiers, it's not going to happen. So I really hope that this stabilization force is serious, that they're training Palestinian police, to go in and to finish the job. Otherwise, there just won't be any peace between Israel and the Palestinians in Gaza.
Indeed, and Mr. Trump's words are, pretty forthright. I mean, it sounds as if they don't agree, then he's going to make sure that they are disarmed by force.
But again, I think it's promising to hear him say that. I'm still doubtful that he's going to send American troops into Gaza, because his American first policy is directly contradicting that. He's not supposed to send any soldiers into the Middle East, but let's see. Maybe he will send some Navy SEALs in to try and finish the job. After all, Hamas is pretty weak now compared to what it was 2 years ago. So it's definitely possible, but you need to be able to sacrifice the same way that the Israeli army was ready to sacrifice nearly 1,000 soldiers in the war against Hamas and other terror groups.
Yeah. Would it be too pessimistic to say that this peace deal, optimistic as everybody was at the time, can't really work then, because there are too many hurdles in the way? Ultimately, it's, at best, it's going to be, near on impossible.
I think you're right. Look, there's not going to be two-state solutions in the next coming years. It'll take generations before the Palestinians and Israelis have put behind their hatred, their wounds, before they can start, educating themselves as well, until they get a two-state solution. Neither the Israelis nor the Palestinians want a two-state solution. All polls show that. It's something that the world is trying to jam down their throats. But for now, the best we can hope for is to stop the bloodshedding. Then there needs to be a long period of healing. The Palestinians need to understand that they cannot teach their children to hate Jews and to glorify terror. And the Israelis need to understand that they need to compromise as well. Otherwise, they'll have terrorism for end on.
Indeed. Jotam, listen, great to have you on with us. Thank you, sir. Stay safe. Jotam Confino, Middle East correspondent. He's in Herzliya in Israel. You heard those last words. It is still very much a kind of holding pen, wait and see. Every kind of cliche sort of applies here. But I think Donald Trump's words are pretty forthright and sound incredibly determined when he says, you will disarm. If you don't, we're going to make you disarm. What does that actually look like in practice? The other story, of course, we've been covering, this broke a couple of hours ago, is that the Oxford student, Samuel Williams, he was the man identified as leading an extreme chant at a pro-Palestinian rally in London, sparking a Met Police investigation, has now been arrested. And it's understandable given what happened here. Let's have a reminder of the video.
I don't want to yap for too long, but a chant that we've been workshopping in Oxford that maybe you guys want to join in. It goes, Gaza, Gaza, make us proud, put the Zios in the ground. Gaza, Gaza, make us proud, put the Zios in the ground. Gaza, Gaza, make us proud, put the Zios in the ground.
I mean, he sounds like about to burst an ulcer with excitement of this. Essentially, unless I'm getting this terribly wrong, and I don't think I am, that's just a chant to kill Jews, right? I mean, that's I don't know how else to... And don't be buying any of this old guff that, oh, no, Zionists are different from... No, that's not the game these people tend to play. Let's speak with Jake Wallace-Simmons, who is, of course, author and columnist. Good afternoon to you, Jake. I mean, very in many ways, not that surprising, because we've seen similar things before. But nonetheless, I mean, it is alarming to think that these people live among us.
Yes, I mean, when I watched that little clip as he gets more and more frenzied, frankly, the person it reminded me of in history was Adolf Hitler in his rhetorical style, those sort of virulent anti-Semitic rants that he used to go on, and this man, he's chanting Gaza, make us proud, put the Zios in the ground. He's not talking to Gaza, he's talking to Hamas, let's be clear, because Hamas are the ones who want to put Israelis and Jews in the ground. And he's not talking about Zionists, he's talking about Jews. Let's just be very clear about that. It's just the use of code, sort of transparent code, to hide the true animus of what's going on. I think the most disturbing thing about all of this is that this guy is not that unusual. I mean, he's unusual in that he's so passionate and so furious and frenzied. But there was a lot of people standing behind him, supporting him, and it was indicative of this radicalism that's infested our universities up and down the country and is coming out onto the streets week after week to dominate our cities as well. He was just representative of a whole load of thousands upon thousands of young people who drape themselves in kaffirs, fly the Palestinian flag, and try to mask their true feelings that Israelis and Jews need to be killed with code words such as Zionists.
Yeah.
It's just, it's a really worrying moment in Britain, I think.
It really is, and I made this point, as you just have done brilliantly, Jake, that, you know, this kind of, well, I'm talking about Zionists. And what do you mean by that? If you push somebody on that, they don't really know. What they really mean, as you rightly say, are Jews. I mean, it's as anti-Semitic as it gets. And, you know, you listen to how frenzied. I mean, the guy looks almost ill when he's up there. Yeah. I mean, it's completely unstable as a person. He's now been arrested. We will wait and see what happens. But, of course, you can arrest one of these people, Jake, but there are many others in their thousands who will take to the streets with horrendous things written on placards, chants not dissimilar to that, ISIS flags being waved as well as Palestinian ones, and they continue to do so. What is it they want, these people, now?
Well, it's very clear they want the destruction of Israel, don't they? They wanted a ceasefire for 2 years, but then when a ceasefire came along, it wasn't the sort of ceasefire they wanted, because the sort of ceasefire they wanted was the one that involved an Israeli defeat. And actually what we got was pretty much an Israeli victory. I mean, it's worth pointing out that Zionism actually just means the belief that Jews should have their own homeland like everybody else. Correct. Like if you're British and you believe that you should have a British homeland, that's your belief. Yep. French, Spanish, etc., etc. The Jews having self-determination, that's all it describes. But it's being used as a cipher for Jews. And like you say, these people are all over the country now, coming out again and again and chanting not against Hamas, but actually for, as in his case, for Gaza, which is code word for Hamas. You know, while Gazans in Gaza are fighting Hamas, being executed and oppressed by Hamas, trying to rise up against Hamas, people like Samuel Williams and his ilk all over the West are actually marching for Hamas. You haven't seen a single one of them say, down with Hamas, Hamas out, free Palestine from Hamas. That should be what they've been chanting from the beginning, but it hasn't been. They are open jihadi supporters.
Yeah, and even when I saw a couple of people try to interview those in the, you know, in the crowds at some of those protests, asking a very simple question to some of these people: would you at least acknowledge that Hamas are also a component of this this war disagreement, however people want to phrase it? Would you at least acknowledge that, you know, that in part it's their fault? And they couldn't even do that. And these were a couple of pensioners in there. It always seemed to be old ladies or students for some reason. I mean, there's a lot of that in terms of the kind of, if you like, the indigenous protesters that are there. It's extraordinary. They couldn't bring themselves, Jake, just to say, well, obviously Hamas, they're a terror group, October 7th for details. Even that can't pass their lips.
Yeah, I mean, the weird thing is that Hamas have played an amazingly sophisticated propaganda game here. On October the 7th, they literally filmed themselves doing their crimes, broadcast it, you know, on GoPros, and broadcast it around the world. Yeah. And then managed to work with the media to edit themselves out of the picture. I mean, if you ask yourself over the last 2 years, watching the nightly news on the BBC or wherever else, how many times you saw pictures of killed and wounded civilians versus killed and wounded jihadis, you only ever saw pictures of killed and wounded civilians. You never saw jihadis. They were edited out of the conflict. When the UN brought out their report accusing Israel of genocide, it didn't mention Hamas. Now, if you take Hamas out of the picture and all you focus on are the civilians who are killed inadvertently by Israel, tragically, in the conflict, in the crossfire, then what you're left with is something that looks like a genocide but actually isn't. And these people on the streets have been influenced by that. They've taken it, embraced it and run with it. And now all of their anger and animus and hatred is directed against Israel, the liberal democracy fighting for its life. And none of it is directed against the jihadis who started this, kept the hostages and continue to oppress Palestinians. And I'm afraid to say that's reflected from the Prime Minister downwards, because he recognised a Palestinian state without mentioning Hamas, without requiring them to release the hostages too. So he's equally as guilty of all this.
Yeah. Final point then, Jake, as we were discussing with Jotam, our previous guest, what are your hopes for this ceasefire holding? I mean, there are some already some areas of real concern, not least the return of those hostages that were murdered on that day. There's issues around that. We know we've seen this horrific footage. Always would urge people not to look it up because it's all full of people being executed by Hamas in the street and cries of Allah Akbar following from the crowds. So not ideal, but does that scupper the future of this peace deal?
I think we're in a very delicate position at the moment because Hamas hasn't changed its spots and never will. Jihadis don't. And one of the techniques which it may be trying to employ is to keep the hostages, the remains of the last few hostages, back from Israel, and also enforcing its dominance in the Strip, tempting Israel to go back in, and for then Israel to be condemned internationally even more and forced to withdraw and concede. That could be what's going on. But either way, it's certain that Hamas has no intention of laying down its arms, no intention of handing over rule of Gaza to anybody. By hook or by crook, it wants to remain in control. And this is partly the result of Israel being forced to arrive at a ceasefire without having fully destroyed Hamas, I'm afraid to say. You know, I'm not pro-war. Nobody in their right mind is pro-war in any way. But sometimes when you're faced with an evil that's implacable, that will not stop until you're dead, you have no choice but to beat them for the sake of peace. And it looks like that's what we've shied away from. And that's partly feeding into a lot of the instability and problems that we're seeing play out in Gaza now.
Indeed. Jake, always great to speak. Thank you. We will speak again, of course. Jake Wallace-Simons, he is the author and columnist, regular with us on these kind of issues. Over to you on that. And the other big stories, 0344 499 1000. On a lighter note, before the news, we had the voice of doom. OK, this is the mystery voice of a political persuasion. Let's have a listen to the voice again.
And I was extremely disappointed.
Who is that then? These are some of the guesses. Lindsay Hoyle, Andy Burnham, George Canning, no. Shabana Mahmood, no. Simon Hughes, Toby Perkins, Keir Starmer's dad, no. Oliver Dowden, it is not. Alex Sherbrooke, it is not. Stephen Kinnock, no. Steve Reed, no. But we have, oh God, you've only gone and done it on day 2. We've got a winner. Peter. Where's Peter? Where's Ivor? Maidenhead way, apparently, says Finn. I think he just made that up. Peter in Ivor says Vernon Coker. It is Vernon Coker, who, by the way, to my shame, I didn't realise, was a government minister at the moment. I think he's a defence minister, but had previous roles in the last Labour administration. Vernon Coker was the answer. Look him up if you can't remember him. You'll go, oh, that bloke, yeah. Which means we've got a brand new Voice of Doom tomorrow. Stand by, more calls on the way, 0344 499 1000.
somebody with 17 convictions in Sweden. In 18 months' time, he will be in this country, living in a house of multiple occupancy or a hotel. He'll be free to walk the streets whilst his asylum claim is being judged. And the only reason we know about this guy is because somebody sent it to me on TikTok. And it makes me wonder, how many other Madapassers are there now in this country? Or will there be as the boats continue to cross the channel?
A message
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Reference the solar farm going ahead in Lincolnshire. This from David in the Cotswolds, enjoying the show, says, when you create power, you always have a downside, the waste. With coal burning power stations, we got acid rain. With nuclear power stations, we got spent radioactive fuel. So which African country are we going to dump 1,700 football pitches worth of solar panels into? It's a good question, because they literally will not last forever. They've all got to go somewhere. And bearing in mind, this is 3,000 acres of solar panels, as David rightly said, the equivalent of 1,700 football pitches of solar panels. That's just one farm. There's loads of others, others in Lincolnshire as well, but all over the country. And this is going to be the energy of the future. Ed Miliband, his mathematics is kind of quite childlike. You know, what? Surely, if you just plant enough of them, or make enough of them, or construct enough of them, it's got to work. It's just a numbers game. Is it that simple? Is that we all get free electricity if we just put loads of these things up? Let's talk to Charlie in East Sussex, reference anti-Semitic chanting from those that should know better. Charlie, what have you got for us? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ian. Do you know, I'm calling you up too much, really, I think, but I don't know what to do about it.
It's fine. It's when you call me in the evening it's a problem, Charlie. But, you know, I don't mind.
Yeah, well, I don't really...
That's why I've got pause on this guy, so...
Look, I think this chap from Oxford, I don't know if anyone sort of picked up on it yet. I haven't seen anything. But before he actually chants, he makes a statement. He says that this is something that we've been workshopping in Oxford.
Wow.
Okay? Now, so when he says that, I'm automatically thinking, OK, so he didn't come up with this on his own. So there's obviously a group, an organised group of people
You'd assume
that are
so.
sitting around a table,
Yeah.
coming up with all of this stuff. So I want to know, are the police going to be looking into his associates? Because you can't, because he's out there actually spouting it, he might not have been the one that came up with it. There's probably someone else behind the scenes, but maybe a little bit more intelligent than that chap, thinking, right, you know, I'll load the gun and he can go off and fire it. That's the point I'm trying to make. So for me, it might sound a bit insidious, but I feel like it is, because I feel like there's this undercurrent, specifically through places like the unis in Oxford, and he went. That's a good university he went to in Oxford, and you know, you think. I really think to myself, what on earth is going on with all these young...
You do wonder. We understand that apparently he has been suspended by the university, but your point is greater than just one man, isn't it, Charlie? And that's that, you know, clearly this wasn't a bloke that just suddenly woke up one day, jumped on a box in the town centre and started chanting. There's a wider issue going on here.
I think there is, Ian, and I really do think that, you know, although we've got him now, the police have got him, what will happen to him, Lord knows, under this two-tier Kia system we've got. But, you know, investigations need to be done into his associates. Is it a group of weird, wacky students sitting around thinking, oh, you know, last week we were Just Stop Oil, next week will be, you know...
Well, there's a bit of that, isn't there? I mean, you know, the rite of passage of being a kind of left-wing rebel as a student, I get that, but there's surely a line. When I felt a bit left-wing, I was against the poll tax, and that was it. But, you know, now we've got people on a different level.
Yeah, I think so, and I think this really needs to be looked into, and I think obviously his associates need to be looked into as well, seriously, because there's this undercurrent, and it's really very, very disturbing. And that's all I want to say on it.
There's a fair point, Charlie. Great to talk again. Thank you, Charlie in East Sussex. A university spokesman said this: an Oxford University student was arrested in the early hours of Wednesday, October the 15th. The precise basis for the arrest has not been disclosed to the university. Whilst the university cannot comment on individual student cases, it has the power to take immediate and proportionate action, including, as appropriate, suspending a student from membership of the university whenever serious concerns are raised. Oxford University is unequivocal. They say there is no place for hatred, anti-Semitism or discrimination within our community, and we'll always act to protect the safety and dignity of our students. Now, I'd imagine there was a point when, if you get arrested for something, that is seen by many as a bit of a life tick box. I was a protester when I was a student. I got arrested. Isn't that great? And, you can tell your mates at the pub, no charges were brought, but it was almost a badge of honour for those who are protesting. I would imagine at some point, for about 2 minutes, this guy felt like that. If you suddenly find yourself in a place where you're going to be removed from your university of choice, if that is the case, then I think you're in different territory then. He may argue consistently that, well, I'm sorry, I believe I fight for a greater cause than my own education. Who knows what goes on in the minds of some of these people, but that's the latest we know. He was arrested. We await further details. 0344 499 1000 is where you'll find us, 87222 if you're leaving a message. It's 3:30. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. 0344 499 1000. So, what is going on with the mental health of Gen Zers? Gen Zers are twice as likely to suffer poor mental health when compared to millennials. In 2009, only 20% of millennials had mental health issues. Now it's over 51% for Gen Zers. Let's speak with Sophie Scott, psychotherapist, on this very issue. Sophie, good afternoon to you. Firstly, what age group are we looking at here when we talk about Gen Zers?
Well, we're probably looking at anything from about 15 up until sort of early 30s.
Okay, so my age group then.
Exactly, and mine.
Funny.
But I think what's important to say is that actually what we've seen like over the last decade is actually there's been an increase in mental health issues across all generations.
Yeah.
There's been the sharpest increase in sort of 16 to 24-year-olds, but we're not just talking about an increase only in that age group.
So even if we factor out the fact that, you know, some people argue that we've kind of redefined what is mental health issue. We used to just talk about a little bit of anxiety or having a bad day. That's now lumped into the sort of mental health thing. Even if we remove those cases, even if we remove the fact that, you know, some people might, you know, just use the term a little bit willy-nilly, there is still an increase quite clearly in people with mental health problems. What, I mean, it's almost the $64,000 question, isn't it? What is it down to? Is it, you know, the 21st century? We've been in the, you know, the 21st century had a lot of changes in it. Is it social media? What is there any kind of go-to strand where that kind of analysis can really begin?
I'm a therapist, so I will never give you a purely black and white answer. But what I would say is that we can't ignore that social media has to sit at the heart of it, you know,
Yeah.
and it's been both a blessing and a curse. Certainly, you know, it's made access to, you know, mental health information much more accessible. It's mainstream, and that's a brilliant thing. But what it's also done is it's sort of brought about this era of self-diagnosis. And, you know, a recent survey by Aviva showed that 1 in 5 young people have self-diagnosed 4 times within the last year. And I think that that's because there are so many of these kind of experts online on social media who aren't actually professionally qualified.
I think that's true.
Around. Yeah.
And even if you haven't got a mental health problem, people use the terminology. You talk about, you know, oh, I need to do this for my mental health, which isn't a phrase, you know, people would have used previously, but it's kind of become very commonplace. So it sort of sits in that sphere where it's, I suppose, very easy to reach for that. If you are having a bad day, or, you know, life's having, you know, you lost a job or a partner, you know, you're split up with, I remember splitting up with a girl years ago, and it was horrific. You know, it was like, I thought I was the only person it had ever happened to. I was going to write a book about it, actually, because I thought, you know, everybody needs to know this. It's like, it's a terrible experience, and I am the person to impart this. But, you know, I was like 24 at the time, and I realised I was one of millions of people, probably on that very day, that it happened to. But I never once thought of it as a mental health issue. I never thought of it like that, even though it plagued me. I mean, day and night, it was horrific. I mean, you know, look at what she lost. That's the only thing I can say.
Well, yeah, I mean, there is a difference between a mental health issue. You know, we all have mental health, actually.
Yeah.
Mental illness. So, you know, there needs to be some distinction there, just as there needs to be a distinction between, you know, my self-diagnosis and a clinical diagnosis. You know, I would argue that maybe you were dealing with, you know, with your mental health at that point. It's a totally natural response to a, you know, heartbreak, right? It doesn't mean that you would have received a clinical a diagnosis, you know, from a professional. So, you know, I think even when we're looking at this data, we do need to interpret it carefully. So, you know, because we've kind of swung from, you know, we don't talk about mental health, possibly, you know, in your generation or, you know, beyond, to sort of now everybody has a diagnosis. And I would argue that probably the truth is somewhere in between.
I often wonder, Sophie, whether we're kind of in an era of navel gazing like never before. We constantly kind of check our kind of status, where we're at, either consciously or subconsciously. Conversations continually, social media kind of accelerates that a bit. We perpetually see how well we're not doing in comparison to others, etc., that is waved in front of us as a kind of constant. You know, back in the day, my mum and dad didn't have a lot of money. It was never talked about. It was never, it just went, it was kind of the disposition you were in. If you came from that background, you were never going to be rich, so you just plodded along, and sometimes at the end of the week or the month, you couldn't pay a bill, but you managed to just about somehow do it, and it was, but nobody, that was just the known way that life is. Today, I think that same experience is probably dealt with in a very different way.
Absolutely. And of course, scrolling and, you know, comparing your life at 2 a.m. in the morning when you're feeling down to somebody whose highlight reel looks very impressive kind of would make anyone feel depressed. And, you know, your mum and dad didn't have that source of constant comparison. And, you know, this sort of over-labeling, particularly, as I said, from people who aren't experts but have a lot of opinions online, you know, a lot of us could identify with, oh, actually, do you know what, I do feel quite anxious, or I do feel, you know, maybe I have ADHD, or even a personality disorder and beyond, because the truth is that we're all human beings, right? So we can all recognize these parts of ourselves within us. You think, oh, I've got a bit of that, oh, I've got a bit of that, and that, and that. So this access to information is a fantastic thing. I think it's removed so much of the stigma around mental health, but it can also be a very dangerous thing where we are attaching ourselves to a label.
Yeah. So we don't want to ignore it when it's very real and serious, but we also don't want to kind of expand its definition to the point that we sort of dilute the seriousness, if you like.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's almost like we've hopefully are starting to normalize, you know, language around mental health and reduce the shame that comes with that. And maybe the task now is to move from sort of language and having that language to literacy, to really sort of understanding and being able to have that credible support.
Yeah.
Part of that means that we need more access to really good quality support. You know, if people can barely get 10 minutes with a qualified, you know, practitioner, then they are going to turn to social media and, you know, to ChatGPT to be their therapist, right? So there needs to be far more actual resources and investment in like literacy and helping people to really, really understand, you know, what it is they're going through.
Sophie, fascinating stuff. It's something we're going to talk about many, many times going forward. Thank you for your time. Really appreciate that. Sophie Scott, psychotherapist. It's strange, isn't it? I suppose different personalities. You know, I have mates, you know, I've got mates. And sadly, the past tense with a cut on a couple of occasions, I've had mates who really did have issues. I mean, getting dumped by, and by the way, you know the chronic injustice of my dumping at 24, which was terrible. And I know Finn probably finds this slightly hilarious. I was the one that did the, I don't think we should carry on, it's not really working out. 2 days later, changed my mind. No problem at all. Just go around there, say, it's been a mistake, I'm terribly sorry, look who's back. So I did that, and I was told to off, basically. No, sorry, mate, you had your chance, you finished it. And I was just waiting for a bloke's head to be around the door and go, who's that? Oh, it was grim, it was horrible. It was the biggest injustice, I promise you, in relationship history. But frankly, when I look back at it, if I was her, I'd have made that decision as well. Never go out with a 24-year-old bloke. Sorry, Finn. 0344 499 1000 is where you'll find us. Let's go back to it. David is in Essex. On this very point, I guess, David, what are your thoughts? Afternoon to you.
Afternoon. I'm coming from the perspective of a 53-year-old father of four, ex-Royal Marine. Now, I run a finance company. My wife is the finance director, and we employ young people all the time. I've got a daughter who's just gone to university, who's struggling in her flat with 12 other people, where there's 6 people that don't even come out of their room, can't clean a kitchen up, can't communicate. And for me, this is about resilience. This is about a lack of parenting. I had a conversation with a business yesterday, a business owner who just got married, and we was talking about children. And he said, "What's your advice?" And I said, "Give your children all the love and affection in the world, but be hard on them.
Yeah.
Be tough on them.
Yep.
The world is tough out there." You know, and this is also from somebody who's experienced suicide in their lives. My ex-mother-in-law committed suicide. 2 of my close friends in the last 4 years have committed suicide. That's real mental health.
Sure.
But, you know, not being able to get up. My wife's just employed 2 new apprentices, and one of those apprentices started 3 weeks ago, and she's been in twice.
Wow.
Because she can't cope getting out of the house and going into work. And this, to me, is about resilience.
Yeah.
We've mollycoddled educationally and parentally children from the moment they go to school.
Yep.
And we forget as parents, we send our children to school, we forget that we think that's the end of our educating our children. And we just leave it down to the teachers.
I suppose once
I've never known so much rubbish in my life.
No, I get it, David. Once the conversation about mental health sort of spiralled out of control, you can't put it back in the bottle. So, you know, you obviously, as you rightly said, and I sadly share similar experiences with you, with friends that, you know, could no longer cope. But now, because we've got this phrase mental health, where any little moment of either injustice or feeling a little bit aggrieved. I mean, you've served in the military, you know what it's like to face a bit of jip in your career, and you run a business, so you also know what it's like to face a bit of jip. There are ups and downs. Obviously, we have a generation of people now who translate that everyday hassle into a mental health problem. That's the new name for existing, almost.
It's a label. It's a label.
But we also don't want... How do we separate that from the real cases that we were just referring to? Because what you need to almost say to young people is you might have a mental health. The chances are you haven't got one.
I think we need a bit of tough love. You know, there's a phrase that you would have heard and I would have heard, is just get a grip. And I know that sounds really harsh. I'm also an ex-social worker, so I understand life and what's going on and how difficult it is for young people and families. But there has to be a reality check. You know, you haven't got mental health, you're feeling a bit down. Somebody said to me last year that they were advised when they split up with their boyfriend to go to the doctor and get some pills.
Wow.
I'm like, are you serious?
Because you sped up with somebody.
No, that's not what it is. You need to, old-fashioned values of growing a pair, look at it in perspective of real life, and our ability to cope with everyday life is diminished because we're mollycoddled as children.
My little boy said to me, David, about a year ago, that there was a teacher he didn't like because the teacher had said to him, if you don't essentially pull your socks up, you're not going to pass an exam.
Yeah.
I thought that was a rather splendid thing for the teacher to say. I thought that, to me, makes perfect sense. It wasn't said in anger. He didn't shout it. He gave it as advice to him. Now, so my little boy was obviously, he was slightly like, why would he say that to me? I said, well, he was explaining to you that, you know, sometimes you've got to put your foot on the gas a bit and maybe focus a bit, whatever. I've told that story to a couple of other parents who were mortified that a teacher would say that to a kid. To a 10-year-old, as he was.
That's pathetic, isn't it? So when that 10-year-old starts work at 18 and he's told by the manager to paint the grass green, it's like, say, if you as a military, paint the grass green. Well, why do I need to paint the grass green? Well, you don't need to know why. Paint the grass green. They then go and paint it white. No, I said paint it green. And then they go and paint it black. And they lose their job. What's the parent going to do? Go back and say, oh, that's disgraceful. No, because the reality is working is tough.
Yeah.
And you need to be able to be told what to do.
And sometimes you learn lessons in doing it. And if everyone's going to tell you everything's rosy, hunky-dory and positive every day of the week, you're never going to learn a flipping lesson. David, thank you, mate, for that. Great call. David in Essex. Louise is in Kent. Louise, on reform and that polling, what are you making of it? Good afternoon.
Well, yes, I was going to talk about that, actually, but there's something else I want to talk about, actually. Ian, is that okay?
Yeah, far away.
About mental health and the solar, because we are facing an enormous solar farm around us. That's another NSIP project.
Whereabouts in Kent are you, Louise?
I'm just outside Ashford.
OK, I know it well.
What's going to happen on Romney Marsh is terrible. There's an enormous battery farm happening. Do you know what worries me more about all this solar? Is that we keep on hearing about constraint payments paid to wind farms. When we've got all this flipping solar, will half of them be switched off half the time because they're making electricity when we don't flipping well need it?
What if you get it for free? What if you...
Well, we won't do that. Come on.
What if they're going to give you free electricity? They're going to come out, they're pumping it from the marsh right into your house, Louise, and it's costing you nothing.
That's not going to happen now.
I don't think it is.
Otherwise, I might fly like a pig or something.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Now, the other problem is, were you aware? Now, I had to research this, but if we have a storm and the pylons go down,
yes,
they need to switch the solar farms off and the batteries off because they feed into the grid and they can't work on it. So we're fed a lie the whole time. Everything we do is that they tell us it's a lie.
And Romney Marsh is full of storms on a bad day.
Exactly. So there's that, but also mental health. And I think I've spoken to you about this before because I had a hell of a long journey in mental health. I was diagnosed in 1980. They now agree that was wrong. It should never have happened. It was due to my parents' terrible divorce. I got started on horrendous medication. I came off everything 5 years ago, went through 4 years of withdrawal. But on the way through, I lost my physio career very early on. They told me at the age of 25 it was unlikely that I would ever work again.
Wow.
It was disempowering. That's what happened. Mm-hmm. In about 2004, the whole recovery ethos came in, and suddenly people like me could work. I fought to go back to work. I eventually got work as a bagpacker at a local supermarket. The best thing I ever did. But I was also speaking on the national stage, and I was shortlisted for a National Radar Award, Person of the Year, for talking to businesses about why they would take people on like me. Because what people don't seem to understand, all these people getting signed off for mental health, businesses don't want you. Yeah. They don't want you. It's a hell of a risk taking somebody on with mental health. And that's the big problem. It's a label. It's a stigma. Yeah. And people say, oh, the stigma's gone. But it's not. Somebody local to me, a highly qualified nurse, once said to me, if you ever hurt my son, I know where to get the key, get you locked up, throw away the key forever. Now... Wow.
They just said that because they'd heard that they knew you'd previously had a mental health issue.
But they knew that I'd been off sick and everything else.
And therefore they thought you were the local lunatic who was going to sort of pick up an axe or something.
Somebody in my village abused me for 25 years. When I tried to stop him, he said, oh, the village knows you're a mad woman.
Wow.
They'll never believe you. That is the level of stigma you get. People don't understand.
And you would think, wouldn't you? You would think by now that, you know, we'd kind of moved from any of that sort of stuff. Listen, Louise, I've got to cut in, but I'm really grateful for your call, and that's pretty powerful stuff to finish on. Thank you. This is Talk.
shooting their own.
A strange twist at the end, when he was after the sentence, and he was speaking from the dock, trying to be heard, making it perfectly clear that he'd rather go back to Afghanistan. Now, in Germany, there are plane loads of people going back to Afghanistan. I wonder if in 18 months' time, the only thing that stops him being on our streets is we have some kind of deal with Afghanistan. I doubt it, but at least it's a possibility, and the Germans have shown us what they can do.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk 5 to 4. We can still get a call in, though. This is Ian down in London. What have you got for us, Ian? Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian. You know, I've got to come up with something.
It's got to be good.
Yeah, well, I promise you it'll be good. Is the cabinet now full of all TV characters?
Yep.
Because the way Mahmood comes across at the moment, she seems, and I don't mean disrespectful, it's like saying how the Kumars, she comes out, oh, you've got to be British and all this sort of thing. She comes out with like...
So that parody of, yeah, kind of an era, she still feels a bit like that.
Yeah, that's right, because it's like the other day, like, oh, un-British marches. Instead of saying anti-Semitic marches, which they were, and Jew hate, no, un-British. Today she comes out with other sort of stuff. David Lammy, like, as we know, the sort of mastermind sort of character. Rachel Reeves, like, can't add up to save her life.
It is like it is a sort of a cast from some kind of new Netflix sitcom.
Yeah. And
sort of the kind of political version of Modern Family or something, you know, I don't know.
Yeah, and he's a mad Ed, you know, like, don't worry, I'm going to do all this green energy. We'll have nothing to pay for at the end.
Yeah.
And he still can't do it.
He still can't do it. Ian, on that point, we have to stop because the news is upon us. Thank you. I do like that idea, that it is a kind of a sitcom of characters, a cross between Dad's Army and Modern Family. The British Cabinet.
Oh, they're just a joke, man. They're an absolute joke.
Did you just turn the heating up?
Yes, I'm freezing cold. My nipples are like door knockers. How are you? I do apologise. How are you? I think Finn's just dressed down a bit today. It's a bit boring, isn't it?
Dressed down Wednesday.
I've been listening to the show. Fantastic. Do you know about Mythomania?
Mythomania.
So Mike launched this morning. He's worked out what's wrong with Keir Starmer. It's called Mythomania.
Mythomania.
And it's just basically somebody that lies, doesn't know why they lie, and
There's
just
a lot
keeps
of
lying.
Chinese. Yeah,
I was staying with the in-laws, and I came downstairs. I was just telling Ricky and Lauren, and my mother-in-law went, Mike's got it right about him. He's got mythomania. He's caught Martin's named the disease after him. No, love, it's called Mythomania.
Yeah.
How are we?
Good.
What about that poll about reform? It's extraordinary.
Well, we've been talking about this because all the stories about, you know, you got the Home Secretary going, I think that there's our borders.
Well done, Shabana. It's taken you
fantastic. She's good. Get on University Challenge.
Yeah.
And then they're scratching their head, and then they look at this poll that says 445 seats and 7 for the Tories. I mean, even if that is a kind of an overplay at what might happen, man alive, if that is not a firework up the trouser leg of the establishment, I don't know what is.
And it'll be interesting to see, and I mean this, in the next 3 years and 8 months, how the establishment, how the other parties, how the left react to
3 years, 8 months.
Do you know what? How they react to Nigel Farage? They're all going to climb together, and he has to have his act together. I saw Clarkson this morning in the newspaper was talking about what does he say about the economy? It's not just about that. I think this government is in dire straits. They've just announced that, you know,